Good afternoon, everyone. On a beautiful day in West Tennessee, here on the campus of Dyersburg State Community College. I want to begin by recognizing someone very special in this audience, and that is the just past president of Dyersburg State Community College. Karen Boyer is out there somewhere. Yay! I told her at lunch it wouldn't be a party without her. So we're glad she has returned to join us this afternoon. What an outstanding legacy she has left at this college. And Dr. Cook has certainly picked that legacy up. We are assembled today for our quarterly board meeting, and we'll conduct our committee meetings throughout the course of the afternoon. I want to thank Dr. Cook and this incredibly able team here at Dyersburg State for hosting us. It is always wonderful to be on our campuses. I think it puts a spring in all of our steps and gives us different perspectives as board members, and this is a pretty pristine and well-run place. But we also know that we are a lot of trouble to host. So thank you for... Exactly. We are a needy group. That's right. But thank you for the hospitality over these 2 days. And that hospitality is also provided by two neighboring TCATs up in Northwest, President Yolanda Jones, who does such a remarkable job. And over at Henry Carroll, President Ridgway, who this is his first quarterly meeting with us. So welcome again to the team, President Ridgway. We also welcome this afternoon new regents to our midst. We have met online with our non-voting faculty regent who joins us, Angela Richardson, with a distinguished background here within our system at the TCAT Harriman for 20-something odd years, Roane State, and also at UT. So again, a tremendous legacy of service, and we're so pleased to have you on our board. Absolutely. And you have met again online from our committee chairs meeting, Regent Jeremy Harrell from Eagleville, Tennessee, but who, as you know, has a distinguished record of service in government and all kinds of interesting things. So it's glad to have you with us here in person today. Thank you, Jeremy. Welcome, welcome. And there is a new face in our midst that some of us met over lunch, and that's Deanne DeWitt from Gallatin, Tennessee, who takes the 6th congressional district seat. Deanne also has a great record in public service. She served on the Sumner County Commission. I think she has touched about every worthwhile cause up in the Gallatin area since she and her husband moved here, originally from Illinois with an engineering degree, but she has vast experience and enthusiasm about serving on the Tennessee Board of Regents. What am I missing that you would like for us to know?
Her husband's a Marine.
Yeah.
There you go. My husband's a Marine. Thanks, Miles. And I'm in the Emily Reynolds fan club.
Well, oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. That's very sweet of you. Thank you. It's nice to meet new friends because sometimes the old ones leave you on the side of the road. Oh, thank you. That's very sweet of you, and welcome. We look forward to both of you, all three of you, actively participating with us over these 2 days. Chancellor, before we make it official this afternoon and start our committee meetings, any opening comments?
Just to reiterate how thankful we are to be here at Dyersburg State, to have our 3 presidents, Dr. Jones, President Ridgway, and Dr. Cook working together. These are 3 high-energy, incredible presidents, and they've got a great evening planned for us. So thankful to each and every one of you for putting this together for us. Welcome to our new board members. We are very glad to have you on board, and we are all fans of the Emily Reynolds fan club. So thanks to each of you for being here. I'm looking forward to 2 great days.
Thank you, Chancellor. We have 5 committee meetings to get to this afternoon. Academic policies, personnel and compensation, workforce development, external affairs, and finance and business operations. So without further ado, why don't I sort of figuratively hand the gavel to Kyle Spurgeon, who has so thoughtfully and generously taken over as chair of the Academic Affairs Committee. Thank you, Regent Spurgeon.
Thank you. And I was telling some of our fellow regents earlier, when you called, you eliminated every reason that I should not do this before you ask. And that's a skill.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm saying that positively.
Thank you.
I'm excited to jump into this role and appreciate the opportunity. So with that, I am calling the Committee on Academic Policies, Programs, and Student Life to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Richardson.
Here.
Regent
Just said
Roberts.
here, sorry.
Here.
And Chairman Spurgeon.
Here.
And Regent Barlin. Here. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Let me turn that back up. Thought I'd be good at this, but I can't figure out the, first item is the consent agenda, proposed revisions to TBR policy 2.01.00.00, general educational requirements and degree requirements. Members were briefed on this policy revision at the August 27th committee chairs meeting. Anything to add, Dr. Reed or Dr. Den? With that, I will call for a motion. Accept.
Move for approval.
Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion? We'll take a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved. TCAT program approvals. For the Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology program approvals, I'd like to call on Vice Chancellor Jonathan E. Reed.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and members of the board. We want to give this update. Thank you. Thank you. At this time, we're bringing forward the TCAT programs for approval as part of TBR policy 2.01.02.00 Technical College Program Review and Approval. The board must approve all programs from TCAT. Also, their accreditation body, the Council on Occupational Education, COE, requires documentation from this governing agency. We're presenting 18 program proposals to you today and 17 program modifications for your review and approval. I'm going to streamline that because all of those materials are in your packet in front of you and give you a high-level update of what's being brought. We're bringing forward 11 implementations. Those mean those are new programs to those TCATs. You can see there that TCAT Crump is bringing on their cosmetology program. TCAT Harriman is very busy with 5 new programs coming to their campus. The HVAC program, Heavy Equipment Service Technician, the Millwright Skills Program, Pipe Fitting and Plumbing Technology, as well as a Telecommunications and Network and Cybersecurity Program. TCAT Hartsville is also bringing on an Industrial Maintenance IMS program. Other new programs to our TCAT include TCAT Hohenwald is bringing on 2 new programs, the 911 Dispatcher in the dual enrollment space, as well as the Advanced Manufacturing Technology and the Traditional Hybrid program. We also have TCAT Jackson bringing on a new Administrative Assistant Technology program as a new program, and our last new program is TCAT Knoxville, who is bringing on their Computer Operating Systems program. Replications mean that the TCAT already offer this program at one of their campuses, and they're extending it to another one of their sites. We have 7 replicated programs. TCAT Crump is bringing on 3 replications of the truck driving program, as well as the welding technology program. We also have TCAT Jackson replicating their existing welding technology program, as well as their practical nursing program in the evening, as well as TCAT Knoxville, who's bringing on their welding technology, as well as a nursing aid program. At this time, again, to meet the accreditation standards of COE, those 17 program modifications are being presented to you for review and approval. These proposals will allow the technical colleges to be more responsive to the needs of students, industry, and the communities. And again, those are in your materials. That concludes my presentation for your vote.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Reed. I'll call for a motion for approval.
I move for approval.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Any discussion? Voice vote?
Aye.
Do I hear any nays? Hearing none, it is approved.
Great. Thank you, Regent Spurgeon.
For a synopsis, I cannot say that word, synopsis of institutional mission profiles, I would like to call on Executive Vice Chancellor Russ Eaton.
Thank you, Regent Spurgeon, Vice Chair Reynolds, Chancellor Tidings, members of the board. Before we get into this item, if I could, Regent Spurgeon, with your indulgence, want to address the restructure of TBR and introduce the new Vice Chancellor, if I may. This board will remember a few months ago, we used existing positions to restructure the Office of Policy and Strategy, which had two major elements. First is to expand the role of Dr. Heidi Lemming to be student success and strategic partnerships, and also to then create a new division of Vice Chancellor for Strategic Enrollment Management. And that new Vice Chancellor is here today, Mr. Troy Grant. Troy, wave, stand up too, Troy. You can clap, please. Yes. He deserves applause. Troy joins us most recently from the Ayers Foundation, where he was the Chief Scholars Officer. Prior to that, he spent 15 years at the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, the last 7 or 8 of which he was the Chief Access and Success Officer leading that bureau at THEC. And we're very happy to have Troy here. Troy, glad you're with us. To get into the item now, Mr. Chairman, this has two elements. One is familiar to this board, a more routine one. One is new. We'll go through one by one. The routine one is a result of the statute in 2010, the Complete College Tennessee Act, which asked for each public community college and university to create an institutional mission profile, essentially an artifact that THEC and others can use when they are creating the outcomes-based funding formula, when they are evaluating campus strategic plans. Basically just a narrative of who the campus is, what its mission is, what its overall identity is, just kind of what the campus is. Those are conducted or created rather by the colleges in conjunction with TBR. We review them thoroughly, and they are then, if approved, transmitted to THEC for their action in compliance with the statute. Those are all in your notebooks, in addition to a new element this year, which is one that includes the campus institutional mission statement. That's a much pithier statement that tries to capture basically the essence, the vision, the goals of a college in 2 or 3 sentences that is always used for SAC COC expectations. That's a new element this year that we think will add to the campus ease when addressing their SACS accreditation visits, and therefore we have combined them this year into that single element. So again, each community college in your materials has that campus profile that's used to meet the statute for THEC, and then their campus mission statement that, if approved, will just stay with that college, and then they would then engage SAC COC during their visit with a mission statement that has been reviewed by this board. Again, all of this has been reviewed by the board staff, and we recommend them for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Call for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved. And for an informational report of the 2025 Tennessee Board of Regents General Education Corps, I'd like to call on Vice Chancellor Jontany Reed and Associate Vice Chancellor Robert Den.
Thank you. We are very excited today to present to the board the General Education Corps revisioning. This is the first time that our General Education Corps has been revised in 22 years since its inception in 2002. This TBR Corps was unanimously approved by all 13 community colleges in March and will go into effect in the fall of next year. This is a 5-year effort that has involved hundreds of faculty members, academic affairs leaders, student affairs personnel, institutional research teams, and research librarians. At this time, I'm going to introduce Associate Vice Chancellor Robert Den, who has been the champion of facilitating this work for the last 5 years, and who will share the collective voice of over 3,000 faculty members across the state. Again, this 2025 TBR General Education Corps is designed to be a holistic and integral component of students' personal and professional development in their associate degree progress. So, Dr. Den.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Reynolds, Regent Spurgeon, Chancellor Tidings, and members of the board. In the spring of 2019, faculty and academic affairs administrators from all 13 community colleges convened for a series of 3 workshops to evaluate general education curriculum that comprises 68% of a student's Associate of Arts or Sciences degree program, a process that had not been undertaken since 2002. A delegation of 5 then made the journey that summer to the AAC&U Conference on General Education Pedagogy and Assessment at the University of Vermont in Burlington. where they charted TBR's 5-year course to redesign general education for the next generation of students. In this new age of artificial intelligence, it's important to recognize the human intelligence that has made this possible. Each member of the steering committee, appointed by their chief academic officer, led a team of 10 on their campus. These teams of 10 included faculty from all disciplines, librarians, student affairs departments, institutional effectiveness personnel, and academic administrators who solicited, disseminated, and discussed ideas within their professional spheres. A process that consisted of hundreds of meetings resulting in the collective community college system voice. In March of this year, the members of this committee cast their votes for their college and unanimously approved the new model you're about to see. I would like to give special credit to the two gentlemen at the bottom right of this slide. Drs. Barry Gidcombe and Ryan Thompson were two of the original Vermont visionaries. And before we examine the framework, let's go back in time to 2019, those workshops I mentioned earlier. And you may be familiar with the common meeting activity where breakout groups ideate and then come together and share their ideas on those big flip charts. And there was one particularly profound point that I believe provided inspiration for this whole endeavor. Next slide, please. Give students tools to create the kind of life and world they want. And with this new model, I believe we have. Carol, would you play the video, please?
Preparing students to navigate a world of evolving opportunities is a critical component of TBR's General Education Core. The core challenges students to discover the inherent interconnectedness of knowledge and the intersection of self and society. The core develops skills in acquiring and evaluating information, communicating ideas effectively, and employing critical reasoning to solve problems. Students develop a curiosity for learning and an appreciation of conceptual complexities, as well as a deepened sense of their own beliefs and values. Through the core, students discover the richness of cultural diversity and acquire an appreciation for human commonality. The core competencies encompass 7 important skill areas: communication, critical thinking, creative and artistic expression, global and cultural awareness, scientific inquiry and mathematical reasoning, information literacy, and ethical reasoning. Ultimately, the General Education Core seeks to equip every student with the foundation they need to pursue a challenging career, experience a rewarding personal life, and inspire others to do the same.
We want our students to reach for these stars. What a great metaphor for higher education. The constellation serves as both the foundation and aspiration for the TBR General Education Framework. Next slide, please. The core model begins and ends with students. It balances the cohesion and power of a unified system structure and the flexibility of institutional autonomy. And all the components are elegantly aligned. From the purpose statement, the faculty created the constellation, from which they crafted the category learning outcomes. In the framework document at your place setting, you will notice the primary core competencies to which each learning outcome is linked. The community college faculty have already begun mapping their courses to the learning outcomes, preparing for that first day of class in the fall 2025 term. And something that is often overlooked: how do students understand the deeper meaningfulness and picture of this course as part of their overall personal and professional development? Imagine professors in every core class highlighting the relevant, holistic, and integral nature of the concepts and competencies in their syllabi as part of their instructional time with students. Next slide, please. When our students return to community college campuses for the spring term, they will encounter print materials in common areas, classrooms, advising offices, and hallways, and digital information on websites, learning management systems, electronic billboards, and social media platforms to elevate their awareness of the TBR core and how it builds a foundation for their future. The images on your monitors are examples of posters designed by the Digital Strategies group that included student testimonials about the power of general education. Next slide, please. So what do employers think about all this? These are the results of an American Association of Colleges and Universities survey of over 500 executives and hiring managers responsible for making hiring and promotion decisions in U.S. companies, various types and sizes across a wide range of industries. You'll notice a powerful similarity between the TBR core competencies and the qualities employers find important in their employees. And there, near the top of the list, is our Constellation's North Star, critical thinking. Next slide, please. I'd like to close the same way we opened, with inspiration and purpose for general education. This one from Thoreau, whom you might encounter in one of our humanities courses. I desire there may be as many different persons in this world as possible, but I would have each one be very careful to find out and pursue his own way, not his father's or his mother's or his neighbor's instead. The youth may build or plant or sail, only let him not be hindered from doing that which he tells me he would like to do. It is by mathematical point only that we are wise, as the sailor keeps the pole star in his eye, but that is sufficient guidance for all our life. We may not arrive at our port with a calculable period, but we preserve the true course. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to address the board.
We have been so fortunate over the years to have outstanding faculty regents on this board. And one of them was part of this planning process, and that's Barry Gitcomb from Columbia State. So I just wanted to give him a shout out. Some of you will remember Barry. He was a great faculty regent. He was a great contributor, and I'm so pleased to see he continues to be involved in significant ways. So thank you. Thank you, Regent Spurgeon.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and I will add that Barry has been the biggest advocate on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For a presentation on research and innovation projects, I'd like to call on Executive Vice Chancellor Russ Deaton again and Assistant Vice Chancellor Amy Moreland.
Regents, we are really excited to bring you this next update. As you know, there's a lot of innovation that occurs across the TBR colleges and TBR across many different areas over the course of many, many years. You're going to hear from Dr. Moreland about 3 of those, some of which you have heard updates on before, but there's new information today. And all of these are the result of us either investing internal resources or mostly procuring external funds to do these kind of innovation pilot projects that results in the work that you're going to see her present. I'll also ask you this. Tomorrow morning during Dr. Tiding's report, I'll give an update on current enrollments, recent student success outcomes, graduation rates, degrees, etc. These 2 are very linked. So what you're going to see today is bearing fruit in what you will see tomorrow. I don't want to tease too much what you're going to see, but it's going to be some good news. And part of that good news is a derivative of what you're about to see. So with that, I give you Dr. Amy Moreland.
Well, good afternoon. On behalf of TBR's research and data team, I am honored to be here today to share updates about 3 projects that seek to use research-backed strategies and an innovative spirit to solve persistent student success challenges. There are 3 projects that are listed separately on your agenda, but we will, with your permission, take them up all at once and pause for questions at the end. Each of the 3 projects that you will hear about today starts from the same place, by observing some persistent challenges in student success. To understand these challenges, I'll ask you to consider the pathway of a student who is enrolling at a community college for the first time this fall. Perhaps think back to when you or your children started college and imagine that pathway from the time a student first decides to go to college throughout their journey towards graduation and their entry into the workforce. Along that path that will often wind, they may face potential barriers, bottlenecks, or difficult terrain. We see the evidence of those challenges in data. As you know, for among first-time students who begin at community colleges, 3 out of 4 who start in the fall will return in the spring. 2 out of 4 will return the next fall, and only 1 out of 4 will graduate on time. It is this challenge, this persistence challenge, that motivates each of the projects that you will hear about today. Now, the projects that you'll hear about will take different approaches. Some of the projects will try to address the challenges on that winding pathway by helping students better navigate that path. Other projects that you'll hear about today seek instead to simplify the path, to shorten or refine that pathway. And still others rethink the student's destination and repave that pathway altogether. Lastly, all 3 of the projects that you'll hear about today will share about how we take these ideas and bring them into the real world to test them through pilots and evaluations. Today, we will share the goals, progress, and outcomes for 3 such projects, and we'll begin with the Tennessee Coaching Project. The Tennessee Coaching Project is one that seeks to help students navigate a sometimes challenging and complex pathway from enrollment to graduation. Jackson State and Northeast State serve as our partners in this project. And this project takes aim at that exact persistence challenge that we spoke of at the beginning, especially at the barriers that students may face very early on upon first enrolling. And this project seeks to address those persistence challenges by pairing students with a coach who can help them navigate that path. This project first began 2 years ago, and the board has since heard several updates about this project. When we launched this in the fall of 2022, we started with a group of coaches for students known as First Steps coaches, who serve recent high school graduates who are deemed academically underprepared for college-level coursework. The following year, based on the early successes of the project, we were able to expand it to serve adult learners with a group of coaches known as Next Steps coaches. Today, I'll focus primarily on outcomes from that first group, those First Steps coaches, but both parts of this project follow a similar storyline. To understand the goals of this project, I encourage you to imagine those 16,000 students who are enrolling at a community college in Tennessee for the first time this fall. When those students arrived, their college readiness was assessed primarily using their high school academic performance, ACT scores, GPA. More than half of those first-time students each fall are deemed academically underprepared for college-level coursework. That represents nearly 9,000 of those 16,000 students who started this year and who were placed into what TBR community colleges call learning support. Now, traditionally, back when I was in college, students who were deemed underprepared were required to take those old remedial courses before they could take college courses. Some of you may remember that framework. This meant that students' progress was often delayed, and honestly, very few students made it past those remedial courses. Nearly a decade ago, as you see in the center of this slide, TBR launched a new model to serve those students. In this new model, students are able to advance directly into college-level coursework without facing those delays associated with remediation. And then alongside that college-level coursework, those students also enrolled in what we call learning support, which are additional courses designed to help those students become college ready. That learning support model in place within Tennessee, implemented nearly a decade ago, is still recognized as one of the most effective and innovative in the country. And yet, there are still challenges of student persistence within that effective and innovative model. For example, of those 9,000 underprepared students who enroll at community colleges this fall, if this year is like prior years, only 2 out of 5 of those students will return next fall. And when we interviewed some of those students who were in learning support and asked them to help us better understand the challenges of persistence in college, they shared that they often felt confused, overwhelmed, or that they lacked someone to help them navigate that complex and winding pathway. And so in the innovations that are introduced in the Tennessee Coaching Project, students who are underprepared and placed into learning support courses are also assigned a coach, a person, an advisor who works with them throughout their first year of college to supplement that learning support coursework with additional support outside of the classroom. Now, as you know, every community college has dedicated and supportive advisors who play a similar role in helping students. So what is unique about this particular model that we're talking about today? Well, first, in this model, that advising and coaching is linked specifically to those learning support courses that students are taking. The 10 coaches that are part of this project exclusively work with students who are in learning support, so they are able to focus their support on those needs. The coaches that are part of this project also serve a much smaller caseload or group of students. It is common at community colleges across the country for every one advisor to serve between 500 and 800 students, which limits those advisors' abilities to make meaningful outreach to individual students. The coaches that are part of this project serve between 100 and 150 students a year, which allows for more targeted and focused and frequent outreach. Lastly, the coaches that are part of this project that we are sharing about today follow a detailed coaching curriculum that has been designed and vetted by TBR staff and our partners. That coaching curriculum allows the coaches to serve students in a lot of different ways. Over the last 2 years, as I've gotten to know these 10 coaches, it is honestly quite hard to describe all of the different ways that they support students. And so mostly to help me remember all of the things that the coaches are doing, we have described them using the acronym that you see here. We call this the coach model. In the coach model, we know that coaches are helping students first and foremost succeed in their courses, by providing frequent outreach, by serving as students' primary academic advisors, which allows them to help with things like degree planning, by including career advising and exploration into every interaction they have with a student, and by supporting the whole student, including things like connecting students with food, housing, and mental health resources. But this is not just another advising idea. This is first and foremost a research project. The coaching project that we're telling you about today is conducted as an experiment, what we call a randomized controlled trial. The methodology here is similar to what you might recognize in a clinical trial of a new medicine. After identifying a group of eligible students who are academically underprepared for college, we then randomly selected a subset of those students. Students who are randomly selected are assigned to one of our 10 coaches. Students who are not randomly selected receive the high-quality traditional advising model already available at their college. This experimental approach allows us to compare data for students who receive coaching to another very similar group of students who receive the traditional advising experience. This approach is the gold standard for evaluating the effectiveness of a student success intervention. Because students are randomly selected and compared in this way, we can feel really confident that any outcomes we see associated with this project can be attributed to coaching rather than to something else like student characteristics or personal motivation. I should note, however, that students who are selected to participate are not required to participate in the experiment. Even after students are selected for coaching, it is up to them to see if they want to engage with their coach. However, I'm happy to share that over the 2 years of this project, 75% of our students are engaging with their coaches, which we find to be very high compared to other similar projects. But what we're really here to talk about today is the impact of this. We have rigorously evaluated the impact of this coaching model across a series of metrics about the students' progress through their first year of college. So in this figure, and I'll sort of orient you to this, in this figure along the bottom, you'll see various metrics that we are tracking. Metrics of student progress, like whether they are persisting from semester to semester or passing key courses. Outcomes were lowest for the group represented here in the blue bar. These were students who were assigned to a coach, but who did not ever meet with their coach. Remember, it's optional, and 25% of students declined to meet with their coach. These students had the lowest outcome, which makes sense. They were receiving neither coaching nor that traditional advising experience. Next, in the red bar, you can see outcomes for students who were eligible but were not selected for coaching and received that traditional advising. If you're familiar with these sort of experiments, this is our control group. This is our comparison group. Our goal for this project was to improve upon the outcomes in those red bars by 5 points, by each of these to increase by 5 percentage points. When we sought grant funding for this work, that was our goal, and it was candidly a very ambitious goal. These are difficult numbers to move, and we are putting this to a very difficult test. So we set a goal to improve these outcomes by 5 percentage points. I'm really happy to be able to share with you today that the excellent coaches at Jackson State and Northeast State met that goal and exceeded that goal in every semester across every metric. Students who engaged with coaching had fall to spring persistence rates that were 13 percentage points higher, gateway course pass rates that were between 8 and 10 percentage points higher, and the other positive outcomes that you see here. These results are just a subset of outcomes for students served by our First Steps coaches who work with younger students, but our outcomes for adult learners who work with our Next Step coaches are consistent, just earlier along in implementation. But as encouraged as we are by these outcomes, we also know that the data doesn't tell the full story. So last fall, our coaching project team at TBR set out to understand the experiences of students in coaching as part of this model. We conducted nearly 50 interviews with students who were part of this, the coaches, and with other advisors who had perspective on this project. Through these interviews, we learned more about the role that coaches are really playing in student lives. For example, you see a quote here from Courtney, a student who worked with a First Steps coach, who shared with us about how her coach helped her during a time of personal distress. Sarah, whose quote is here, shares how her coach connected her with campus resources, like the food pantry, which was a common theme in our conversations with students. One of the coaches here describes the ways in which they work really hard to meet every student where they are at. As I mentioned, we also talked to other advisors who were not part of the project, including this one, who helped us understand the difference between this coaching work and traditional advising. One of the non-project advisors shared that her caseload was much larger than the coaches, which made it difficult for her to meet with her students ever more than once a semester. But this quote perhaps best summarizes the role that coaches play. Kyle, one of the students assigned to a First Steps coach, said, "I know that if I ever get into trouble, I can always call my coach and they can point me in the right direction." Since the start of the project, coaches have now served more than 2,000 students, and the work continues this year. These student stories, along with the data that we have shared and more details about the coaching model itself, are all made publicly available in a series of research briefs on the TBR website, and you see those here. This fall, we are also working to build a coaching toolkit that will be shared publicly and made available to all community colleges who wish to learn more about this model or implement any of its components. I'll now turn to our second project. To understand this project, I'll return to the metaphor that we used at the outset. Imagine again that winding and sometimes complex pathway that a community college student may encounter and the difficult terrain that may be in front of them. Some projects, like the coaching project you just heard about, seeks to help students navigate that difficult terrain. Other projects seek to change the path altogether, to streamline, simplify, or shorten the path. And a project focused on accelerated courses is an example of that kind of reform. This project focuses on changes that colleges are making to their academic calendars by shifting coursework from the 15-week traditional semester to accelerated 7-week courses. Our partners in this project include Chattanooga State, who led the TBR system in the widespread adoption of 7-week courses, along with 2 other early adopters of this model, Nashville State and our host today, Dyersburg State. Now, if you're familiar with these kinds of courses, you may know that colleges have traditionally offered courses in all kinds of different lengths. But this model of 7-week accelerated courses has recently grown in prominence. In our system over the last decade, these 7-week courses have quadrupled. And this has especially been led by colleges like Chattanooga, which in 2021 first implemented this model, and now 70% of course enrollments at Chattanooga are offered in the 7-week format. Here you can see some examples of some of the student-facing material that Chattanooga State provided to students to help explain how this model works. In the traditional college schedule, full-time students might take 4 or 5 courses spread out over 15 weeks. But in this new accelerated model, the semester is divided into 2 sessions of 7 weeks each. Because courses are shorter, students typically take fewer courses at any one time, and so full-time students in this model may take 2 or 3 courses during each 7-week session. As you can imagine, there are trade-offs between the traditional 15-week format and this accelerated 7-week format. In the 7-week format, courses are offered at a much quicker pace and assignments come fast. But the trade-off is that because students are taking fewer courses at once, they can focus more deeply on each course. Given the rise of these courses and their potential benefits, we set out to understand the impact of this college-led innovation. We analyzed data from across the TBR system to try to compare outcomes for students who took courses in the 7-week format compared to that traditional 15-week format. And then beyond the data just on outcomes, we were also really interested in understanding how students, faculty, and staff experienced this significant change in how a college does business and offers courses to students. So to understand those experiences, we conducted a student survey and over 100 interviews with students, faculty, and staff, resulting in over 7,000 minutes of interview footage that we then transcribed and analyzed. Here you can see the impact of taking 7-week courses on student outcomes. The figure on the right is showing the results of some rigorous quantitative analysis of student outcomes, and you can see a very positive story. Course pass rates were higher in 7-week courses by 4 percentage points compared to 15-week courses. Course failure rates were lower in 7-week courses, which is a positive outcome. And most notably, course withdrawal rates were especially lower in 7-week courses than in 15-week courses. This was a recurring theme of our study of 7-week courses. As one of our college partners at Nashville State put it, 7-week courses allow life to happen. As disruptions from outside responsibilities like work and childcare may disrupt a student's life, the 7-week course model allows for greater flexibility. If at midterms a student needs to change their schedule or drop out, they will have at least banked some credit in those first 7 weeks. Additional analyses that's available on the TBR website shows additional promising but still preliminary improvements in other metrics like fall-to-fall persistence and other long-term outcomes. Our student survey and interviews also highlighted their positive perceptions of 7-week courses, while also noting some of the trade-offs of this approach. Overall, students and faculty and staff agreed that these 7-week courses provide a lot of valuable flexibility for them, especially for those students that are balancing school with work and caretaking. At the same time, all 3 groups, faculty, students, and staff, emphasized that these courses may not be right for every subject or every learner. But many of the people that we interviewed acknowledged that shorter course duration can really boost student motivation. Like this student whose quote you see here, who shared that in the 7-week course they feel more engaged and less bored. Faculty also recognized the value of 7-week courses, but also noted that it can be challenging, especially for some students who just need more time to learn. Students, faculty, and staff also reported that this did increase their workload and led to sometimes some additional stress, that fast pace of the course. And so the student quoted here identified a need for better time management skills to help them succeed in these faster paced courses. Faculty also described the impact of accelerated courses on their teaching styles and their approach to assignments, like the quote you see here. Faculty and staff also talked a lot about the impact of this innovation on their own workload, the way it changed how they approach their work. Yet despite those challenges and increased workload, faculty and staff generally felt that the benefits of 7-week courses for student outcomes still made them worthwhile. When reflecting on the challenges, the additional workload, and the trade-offs of this model, one staff member we interviewed said, "Is the juice worth the squeeze?" Well, at the end of the day, I think it is, because you see students succeed no matter what it takes. Students, faculty, and staff did share with us a lot of ideas to help improve the implementation of 7-week courses. They especially noted the need for additional advising and tutoring to help students keep up with the fast pace of these innovative course models. All of our findings about accelerated courses are featured in 2 in-depth research briefs that are available on the TBR website. The first brief looks at data on 7-week courses, and the second brief on the right will be released this October and includes nearly 80 pages of student, faculty, and staff stories and quotes that help us better understand this innovation. Lastly, we will briefly turn our attention to one more project. And once again, I'll ask you to think about that complex and winding path between enrollment and graduation. And we said sometimes we are seeking to help students navigate that path, sometimes we are seeking to refine the path, and sometimes we're building an entirely new path altogether with a different destination. Over the past 2 years, 4 community colleges have been implementing college-designed projects to reimagine the community college. In 2022, colleges submitted proposals in response to a concept paper from TBR about opportunities to address that persistence challenge in entirely new ways. 4 colleges were selected, and their work has been underway since last year: Jackson State, Pellissippi State, Southwest, and Walters State. Each college has designed their own approach to reimagine the community college, but all 4 projects center around a few core principles. This project imagines a community college where all students encounter the 3 things you see here. First, even before students enroll, they are engaged in opportunities to help them find a career path that fits with their interests, their talents, and the workforce needs of their community. Second, they all have the opportunity in their first year through resequenced coursework to earn a workforce relevant certificate in their first semester or first year. And then after earning that initial certificate, they have the opportunity to keep earning additional credentials along a career pathway. This was the original idea that was brought to the board 2 years ago. To understand this project in more depth, it may be helpful to compare the reimagined college to a sort of stereotypical, traditional community college experience. Along the left, you see that stereotypical experience, and along the right, you see this idyllic reimagined experience. In this reimagined experience that we are working to envision with these 4 colleges, each student has an opportunity to explore careers. They are connected to career communities of fellow students, faculty, and staff in careers like the ones they're interested in. They are earning workforce-ready certificates in their first year, and then they are able to earn stackable credentials as they move forward. To take this sort of idealized, reimagined college into the real world, though, takes quite a great deal of planning and restructuring and significant investments of time from college leaders. The phrase we use most often when talking about this idea with colleges is whole college transformation. So this summer, we hosted an in-person workshop with the presidents, senior leaders, and project teams from each of the pilot colleges. There, those 4 colleges had a chance to share about their progress toward that idealized, reimagined college. And here you can see some of their progress, and there were some common themes. Each college has made significant progress in embedding career exploration and advising into their new student orientation and onboarding events. Colleges are connecting students with those career communities and are including content specific to each career community in redesigned coursework. This October, TBR will release our first research evaluation of this effort, which will feature more details about the project accomplishments that you saw on the prior slide and the college's goals for the second year of this project. In conclusion, I'll say each of these three very in-depth innovations obviously involves significant investments of time and attention from college leaders. Several of the college faculty, staff, and leaders who bring these projects to life are in the audience or watching online. And so I would love to be able to acknowledge their incredible work here and the ways that they help keep us focused on student outcomes. Each of these projects are also coordinated by a team of 7 TBR staff who help design and implement these pilots and produce the research findings that you've seen today. Several of those staff are in the audience here, and for some of them, this is their very first time attending a board meeting. So I'll conclude by acknowledging their significant contributions to this research and this spirit of innovation. With that said, happy to answer any questions.
Those first two projects, the coaching project and the accelerated 7-week, so what's next? You had success.
Great questions, and I think that depends on the college leaders. I mean, I think we play a role in helping spark these ideas and support them wherever possible, but I think it's up to college leaders to decide what's next. For the Tennessee Coaching Project, we have another year left where we will continue to serve about 1,500 additional students and share more of their outcomes. For accelerated courses, those 3 early adopters are full steam ahead and looking for opportunities to offer more of those courses at their institutions. And I think other community colleges are eager to learn from the experiences of those early adopters.
Okay, we'll be asking them. That's good.
Great presentation. Love the analysis and being able to measure the success of each. And the question I had is, how many coaches do we have for all the students? I believe you mentioned a number. There was 9,000 underperformers that were first-time enrollees.
Right.
How many coaches do we have for those 9,000 students?
So it's a great question. There are about 9,000 students placed into learning support each year. For this particular project, where we were piloting it just at 2 community colleges,
Okay, that makes sense now.
it's a little bit smaller. We have 10 coaches
Yeah, so I
altogether.
thought you said it was 10, and I thought, if I did my math right, we'd need 72 coaches
Right,
for
right.
the 9,000 underperformers, so,
Luckily, we were able to pilot this just at Jackson and Northeast.
okay, thank you.
I guess that it's a financial decision as well, is it? Okay. So I guess,
Great investment.
yeah. So I guess we need to talk to the chancellor a little bit more, so.
Any other questions? And again, you don't have to be on the committee to ask a question.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
On the, I'm really intrigued by the 7-week courses. That's really interesting to me, though. On the coaching project, when you were, if I read it correctly on the screen, we were able to segment out those students who were assigned coaches or selected for coaching but did not participate with their coach.
Right.
Are we able to segment out of the group that were not selected for coaching? Are we able to segment out the population that did not interact with their traditional advisor, or did they all interact with their traditional advisor?
It's an excellent question. And if you see the research and data team over here lighting up, it's because that's a question that we are eager to try to answer. Right now, we have some data limitations, but we're hoping in the full evaluation of this project over the next year to be able to dig more into that question, which is an important one.
Thank you, Dr. Mullen. That was incredible, and I always love when you're walking up because I know there's some yummy stuff coming up when you start presenting. It just gets the juices flowing, to your quote that you had earlier. couple of just quick questions. I think I remember the pilot being presented maybe last year. Okay. So if that's the case, then, and you said I'm kind of getting answers as we go through other questions, but there's another year left. But so is funding the limitation for expanding it to other beyond the pilot principle?
I think there's a couple of things we want to think through. One, I mean, this is a pilot. We want to make sure it works. We have that preliminary data that we find very encouraging, but we want to dig into additional data resources and make sure that this is a project worth continuing. We think that it is, based on what we're able to see so far, but we want to continue to explore the full effects of this, and then any extension of that would also require financial resources.
Okay, and then just a quick question on the columns that you had on your chart. The first one was that they did not reach out to their coaches.
Right.
The second column said, I believe, that they weren't selected for.
Right.
Does that mean that they were in the category of did not need the help, or that they were within that 9,000 but just weren't selected because you only had a small number that you could
The latter.
choose?
So they were students who were eligible based on their academic under preparation, but were not selected to receive coaching because we have a limited number of coaches and we want to be able to compare that outcome.
And so then it made me wonder if that's the answer, because their numbers were higher than the number that did not get coached, but were selected for coaching, if I'm saying all that right.
Absolutely.
So there must have been some criteria that you used to select the ones for the coaching other than just ACT scores or whatever, because
It's pretty broad. So we
Okay.
select them based on their college, their age, and if they are academically underprepared. Once we've identified that group, we use random numbers to assign which ones get coaching and which ones in that red bar get the traditional advising experience.
because I just found it very interesting that that red bar actually did reasonably well compared to the ones that did not. So
Great.
thank you.
To Regent Powers' question about the limitations around financing and budget, are there opportunities or other examples where we can work with nonprofits, philanthropic organizations, anything like that to provide maybe not exactly the same, but a similar type of service?
I think there's certainly opportunities, and I'll defer to the Chancellor for her thoughts on that.
There are, and actually you're going to hear about one of those in our legislative ask. It is something that we have had on the table every year for the last several years, knowing that coaching was being successful. We know that it is a better way. A lot of this is part of the AIRS model as well, what they do on a consistent basis. We've just not been able to get the funding to the level that it was approved at this point. We know it works. We know that if we can provide that individualized attention, it is going to make a difference in the lives of our students.
Probably a few $1 million.
Quite a few. Yeah, many few, but a good investment, as you said earlier, a good investment in our students.
I was going to add, thank you, Dr. Moreland, and welcome to your research team. Those who are here for the first time, they all do great work. I love that you had an RCT for the first project. To this last bit of this conversation, I know you guys are probably working on this, but to extrapolate from the findings you had in here and do the ROI on with that retention rate, what the tuition revenue coming in is, what that could get from the outcomes-based funding formula as well, and then from there, what seed funding is necessary to expand it. This is really fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have to say this or I'll drive myself crazy thinking about it, but this is the third coaching presentation I've heard in the last week, actually. Mm-hmm. And one was at the Chattanooga Girls Leadership Academy, which deals with, economically disadvantaged young ladies. And the coaching model, you could take their numbers or your numbers and basically the same. The ones that get the coaching treatment, same thing. The other meeting was at the United Way, and it looked at kindergarten, third grade reading, 8th grade math, I think was what they were looking at. Basically the same statistics. And I just had to get that off my mind because I think what you're doing is wonderful. But is there anything that you've looked at in the background of those 9,000 students is there some commonality in there that maybe somewhere along the way they could have been helped so that when they get to one of these schools, they're better positioned, better trained, better educated to head that off?
Absolutely, and I think our colleges certainly do that in the many different ways that they serve underprepared students. We do see for these students, they are disproportionately low-income students, so I think we see the challenges of living in low-income neighborhoods or attending low-income schools manifesting in their once they get to college. But that's the thing that stands out the most, is that they are disproportionately low-income students.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to hog the mic. I just had one other question, and that was trying to distinguish between students that were involved in dual enrollment and that weren't as it relates to your program. Do you have that data where you're able to?
So for the coaching program, very few of those students participated in dual enrollment, in part because if they participate in dual enrollment, they're able to achieve some academic milestones that allow them to bypass those learning support courses. Right. So not all, but most of the students who are served by the coaching project did not participate in dual enrollment.
Yeah, that seems to be the magic, where the magic happens almost. So if we can somehow in the coaching, if we were to, and I think in the AIRS programs, I remember that, but they're actually housed in the high schools. And so if some of this that you're talking about can be implemented just a year even earlier, that might be of huge benefit. Thank you again, and to your team.
Well, I think the amount of questions and the depth of those questions is an indication of the interest in these programs. So again, congratulations to your team putting all this together, and a great delivery today of this presentation. That's a whole lot of information that you boiled down extremely well. So thank you for that. Any other questions before we move on? So with that, any other business to come before this committee? Hearing none, the Committee on Academic Policies and Programs and Student Life for the Tennessee Board of Regents stands adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your help. Thank you. There are two things I want to mention before we move on to personnel and compensation. And the first, Regent Spurgeon, is really to convey our sadness to the region here in West Tennessee on the loss of James Ross, who was the CEO of West Tennessee Healthcare. He was large in spirit and large in life, and such a tremendous loss for the region. And Dr. Rothstein from Jackson State was telling me earlier, he is a Jackson State alum, and what a great partnership our community college had, thanks in no small part to him with West Tennessee Healthcare.
Absolutely, and you took the words out of my mouth. All of you have giants, men and women that live in your community and give back to your community. James Ross was the epitome of that in Jackson and West Tennessee, and not only was he beloved in Jackson, throughout West Tennessee, and he was a man. I've told this story a lot. When I started my job at the Chamber 15 years ago, I walked through the hospital with him, and there's a difference between employees telling you hello and then hugging you and showing you respect. Wow. That's the kind of man he was. And so, yeah, Jackson, West Tennessee, we've lost a great man.
Yeah.
So
but his spirit will live on.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And let me also welcome our, where'd she go? Our Commissioner of Education will be right back. Lynette Reynolds joined us. But we are so grateful to have her with us this afternoon and hope to hear from her along the way as well. So with that, let me turn the floor over to Regent Powers, who will take us into personnel and compensation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That'll be a hard one to follow, Regent Spurgeon, but I will do my best. I'm calling the Committee on Personnel and Compensation of the Tennessee Board of Regents to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Regent Burdine.
Here.
Regent Hooper.
Here.
Chairlady Powers.
Here.
Regent Stevenson, who's on with us virtually, can you confirm if you can hear and speak with us? And are you alone in the room? Regent Stevenson, we're not able. Oh, there you go.
I'm sorry, I had the mic off. I can hear you, and I am alone in the room.
Thank you. Regent Varlin. And Regent White.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And as we have a quorum, we will proceed with the first agenda item, which is on consent agenda. Members, as you recall, at the committee chairs meeting, we were briefed on the following items and materials were provided on our website. Unless anyone has a question about an agenda item, we will act on all three of them with one roll call vote. Don't see any objection. A, faculty promotion at Pellissippi State Community College. B, faculty promotion increases corrections at Pellissippi State. And the last one, revisions to policy 6.04.00.00 on pregnancy, childbirth, and related medical conditions. Is there any objection to acting on these items with one vote? Hearing none, I will call for a motion.
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Regents. And the second was also provided, so is there any discussion? And hearing none, we will act on that motion. Can we have a roll call vote, please, ma'am?
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Hooper.
Aye.
Chair Lady Powers.
Aye.
Regent Stevenson.
Aye.
Regent Barlin.
Aye.
Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And that item passes. Thank you so much. And our next item on the agenda is faculty emeriti. Call on Vice Chancellor, Ms. Dr. Jothany Reed for the recommended proposals, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Powers. Good to see you again, Board. It is always a privilege to bring forward the excellence of our faculty across our colleges. We know our faculty are the key drivers to meeting our mission around student success and workforce development. To share with you all the process, TBR's Faculty Emeritus Policy 5.02.01.10 governs the submission, review, and approval process for the faculty emeritus candidates that you have before you, and their information is in your packet. College presidents nominate these candidates based on distinguished institutional service. Presidents may confer with other staff, but ultimately this is a presidential decision. Although there's no specific criteria for this recommendation, typically it tends to be based on things such as length of service, significant contributions, outstanding academic achievement, and exceptional embodiment of institutional values. There are non-monetary benefits associated with this very prestigious honor. The presidents may do things such as offer office space to these emeritus, library privileges, free admissions to arts or athletic events, or ID cards with honorary titles. Nominations are reviewed by me before I forward them to the chancellor, and this must have the chancellor's approval before having the board's approval. At this time, I'm bringing forward 4 excellent candidates for faculty emeritus. Vera Brooks is an associate professor of business at Motlow State. Daniel Hyder, associate professor of environmental health technology at Roane State. Ja Pang Wang is associate professor of English at Northeast State. And Rosie Graham is an associate professor of computer science at Motlow State. Regent Power, these are recommendations, and we're asking for action from the board today.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any questions for Dr. Reed? Yes. Regent
Move for
Hooper.
approval.
Second.
They jumped right to the motion. Thank you. There was no discussion there. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, ma'am?
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Hooper.
Aye.
Chair Lady Powers.
Aye.
Regent Stevenson.
Aye.
Regent Barlin.
Aye.
And Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and the motion passes, and I just love my effective and efficient committee that is on the ball all the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And is there any other further business to come before the committee? Hearing none, the Committee on Personnel and Compensation for the Tennessee Board of Regents stands adjourned. Thank you, Madam Chair. Back
Thank
to
you, Madam Chair. Efficient and effective in all things in your life, absolutely. So, you know, what always strikes me on the faculty emeritus is just counting the number of years of service to TBR. These 4 represent almost 150 years of service. That is just remarkable. So congratulations to all, well deserved, and you have our gratitude. Regent George, you are up next as chair of our Workforce Development Committee, please, sir.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair Reynolds. I'm calling the Committee of Workforce Development to order. Secretary Perry, please call the roll.
Thank you. Just a moment, please. Chairman George.
Here.
Regent Hooper.
Here.
Regent Powers.
Here.
Regent Spurgeon.
Here.
And Regent Stevenson, you are on with us virtually. Can you confirm that you can hear and speak with us and that you are alone in the room?
Yes to both questions.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. All committee members here, and we have a quorum, so we will proceed. At this time, I'd like to call on Executive Vice Chancellor for External Affairs, Kim McCormick, to introduce the Executive Director for the Center of Workforce Development.
Well, good afternoon, Chairman George, members of the committee. Yes, you're right. At this time, I'll introduce Dr. Jeff Sisk, who's going to go over the workforce report for the year. And then also Jeff will stay with you all, and Zachary Adams will join you so that he can go over the results of the workforce convening. So, Jeff?
Thank you. Committee Chair George, members of the Workforce Committee, members of the board, and Chancellor Tidings, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to bring to you the Workforce Report. As a reminder, this committee meets twice per year in your June and September board meetings. Next slide, please. 2 agenda items for today. We'll talk about the THEC reporting cycle and the community college workforce hours preliminary report. And then, as Dr. McCormick mentioned earlier, I'm going to co-present the workforce convening outcomes with Zachary Adams from the Academic Affairs Office. Next slide, please. Just as a reminder, and I ought to ask Regent Gentile to do this for me, but the THEC reporting cycle, we're kind of in the throes of it right now. We received a request for workforce hours reports for the fiscal year back in August. This reporting year is for July 1st of 23 through June 30th of 24. You see the timeline there. Yesterday, the community colleges had their hours submitted through my office to THEC for vetting. And then THEC will review that. They'll reach back out to the campuses for any appeals or further questions and things about the workforce hours that they submitted. And then on October 1st, THEC will submit or approve the final workforce data. So I'm going to present to you our preliminary numbers. Next slide, please. Let me do a clarification on this slide here. Regent George and I were emailing early this morning, and the title for that slide probably needs a little better working title, and I'll work on that. But when you think about our comprehensive community colleges and those traditional roles of the comprehensive community colleges, on the non-credit side, our community colleges are going to do things like community education, think motorcycle riding, safety and courses, things like that, for the benefit of the community. And they'll also do workforce courses as well, generally contracts with industry employers to help workforce skills. So this slide is non-credit / workforce development as opposed to non-credit / community education. I'll make this slide better. Again, this is preliminary data subject to THEC's final vetting and posting. The TCATs are not part of the outcomes-based funding formula, but we always report these numbers to the board, to the workforce committee, to the board, and to THEC as well as more of an FYI. And call to your attention just some general numbers there for the community colleges. Our prelim numbers are up about a little over 8%. Our goal coming into the year was 4%. Our TCATs are up almost 50%. Had a really good year in the TCATs, and we're even expecting greater than that. Once we finish the vetting process, kind of that iterative review of the workforce hours with THEC, kind of that back and forth, we may lose plus or minus 2% as we work through that. And so we'll still be above our 4% goal, and we're trending in the right direction. So let me pause there while we're looking at this slide. If there's any particular questions any member of the committee has. Yes, sir.
So this is total hours for each school, all students combined?
No, this is workforce hours only, right? Non-credit for workforce training.
Do we have that average by student, average per student?
Average per
hours
student.
Okay.
I'd have to run a query on that, but we can. We have an individual head count as well. That will be a little, but yeah, we can pull that data.
Hey, Jeff,
Yes,
there's significant differences in some of those schools. Mm-hmm. Does that have something to do with different ways of calculating?
Generally, what you'll see on that, so for example, let's say Walter State. It's a bit of a regression back to the mean because they had a really good year last year, and they probably lost a grant related to workforce training. The grant expired or something like that. So that's more of a regression to the mean for them. Motlow had a tremendous year, probably the best year they've ever had on the workforce side. Dr. Milligan at Motlow, I asked him about that specifically. A really great job in Coursera and Google micro certifications as it relates to the workforce. That was an emphasis for Motlow this year. So, but generally in Vol State, similarly, Nick at Vol State, I talked to him, and it's about those micro credentials certifications as it relates to the workforce through Google. And so the numbers are even above pre-pandemic numbers. And so when we have conversations with THEC, that draws their attention as well. And I like to point out to the auditors at THEC, well, we're just getting back to pre-pandemic numbers, and we're showing that growth rate from there as well. But normally a drop or an addition in numbers can be explained via a contract or a grant.
So Jeff, to Jeremy's question, and the Google certification is a great example, but are there a couple of more specific examples you could give, behind some of these numbers, just to edify us a little bit more about who's coming to us, who we're helping, what this represents?
Sure, apprenticeships. Apprenticeships, when you talk Northeast State or Walter State, Bell Helicopter, for example, in Northeast Tennessee, skilled labor. Industries having to find, you're not going to be able to just to hire a qualified person coming in off the street. You have to grow your own. So they will enter into an apprenticeship opportunity and a contract with a community college or a technical college, primarily community colleges, particularly for the related technical instruction and to do all the tracking and reporting for them as well. So apprenticeships are a huge growth area. And in fact, THEC in the reporting instructions this year, anytime a college reported a workforce activity that exceeded 1,000 hours by itself, they wanted a narrative explanation on it to see exactly what that was. So that's been some great reading for me. And those are the kind of explanations that you get. This is an apprenticeship opportunity with Bell Helicopter, for example. Sure. Yes, sir.
One more. So if we look just at the 23-24 hours, they range from 38,000 to 207,000 plus.
Yes, sir.
If we sorted by that column from largest to smallest, would that generally, not necessarily exactly, but generally reflect the student population as well?
I haven't done that analysis. I think it would be, are you saying for the general for-credit student?
Since it's a collective number for the school.
Correct.
Of all student non-credit workforce development contact hours, is that driven also by population of the school, student population?
There may be a correlation, but it's more about the local business and industry environment, number of manufacturers, number of businesses, for example. So in general, if you look at our more rural community colleges, will have a lower workforce number. They don't have as many industry to work with.
Opportunity.
Sir?
Not as much opportunity.
Correct.
Well, and you just said something critical to us understanding. It isn't just our traditional student. This is a business and industry partnership, for lack of a better word.
Right. Generally, the students in your workforce students are employed full-time, looking to upgrade their skill sets to do better on the job. Yes, sir.
Great service to the industry in those communities.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have entire workforce departments at all of these colleges. That's what they do all day long. Go out and have these conversations with industry. Student success and workforce development, that is the epitome of workforce development, what those folks do in those offices.
That's just great that it's that the amount of hours have returned to post-pandemic, pre-pandemic measures and growing. So.
Yeah. And it's a real, and we've established these relationships with these business and industries, and they know we're a reliable workforce partner with them, and they'll keep coming back to us. But to our earlier point, apprenticeships are a huge growth area for our workforce programs.
Good job.
Thank you. All right, let's go next slide, please. I'd like to bring up Assistant Vice Chancellor Zachary Adams from Academic Affairs Office, and Zachary and I are going to co-present the Workforce Convening Report, of which you have a copy in your board materials as well. Zachary?
Good afternoon. Next slide, please.
Good afternoon.
Earlier in the summer, the chancellor or actually in the spring, the chancellor sat down with her counterparts at the Department of Community and Economic Development and the Department of Labor to design a convening that was to bring together business leaders from across the state with our college presidents and in some cases vice presidents to receive direct feedback from them to celebrate best practices and successes and elevate those partnerships to hopefully expand across the state. There were over 100 employers who came to this event representing Tennessee's top industries, including advanced manufacturing, agriculture, business, IT, healthcare, and logistics. Next slide, please. And the convening was not only an opportunity to reflect and share best practices and plan for the future, but an opportunity for employers to provide actionable feedback directly to the three agencies who co-hosted this event that will inform the ways in which we support workforce development across the state, both through our academic programming and our workforce training led by Jeff in the Center for Workforce Development. Next slide, please. Jeff and I are going to give you a quick sense of the overarching findings from this convening. In your report, each of the industries that I mentioned has a deeper dive on specific feedback that those CEOs and business leaders gave. And these overarching findings try to tease out commonalities from across all 5 industries. Next slide, please. The first is that business leaders are concerned with labor participation rates. As many of you know, labor participation is a very stubborn number, and it is hard to increase that in any community, in any state across the nation. Additionally, in some industries, business leaders are also concerned with the aging out of their existing employees. And they're weighing those concerns with the number of available jobs that are currently opening. However, whenever a concern was brought up by an industry partner, they would immediately say, we're eager to continue to explore and expand the ways in which we partner with community colleges and technical colleges to provide opportunities that innovate in place, space, and time for where training takes place, how long it is, and how it's delivered. Next slide, please. Additionally, it was loud and clear throughout the convening that business leaders value their strong partnership with our community and technical colleges. They appreciate the ways in which leaders from our colleges are already partnering with them in the apprenticeship space, in existing workforce training, but they're looking for and are recognizing that their existing workforce has more specialized needs. And to give you one example, the CEOs and business leaders that came to this convening weren't just from Fortune 100 companies that are based in Nashville. They also represented small business owners from across the state. And in those settings, employees have to be cross-functional in nature. And so those business leaders were concerned with, how do I take an accountant on my team and build his skill set in some IT-related field? And so those specializations, creating cross-functional employees, are top of mind and are the ways in which our our employers are looking to continue to partner with our schools.
Jeff? Yep.
And they do that via workforce training. Sorry, Zachary didn't use my notes. He doesn't need notes. So the next one, we talked about stackable credentials. Business leaders are interested in short-term workforce training opportunities for the current workforce. Again, your incumbent workers, people who are already working for you, the cross-functional nature of what we need, particularly in small businesses, but to grow those skill sets for those individuals, but stackable credentials. I'll give you a perfect example. Have a consulting company wanting to rent space at TCAT Jackson right now to offer this IV certification for chemo IVs. And so it's a particular certification. People are paying out of pocket almost $400 to get this certification. A lot of PNs and RNs are doing that as well. But that's a stackable credential. They get their LPN or they get their RN, then they get this IV cert on top of that, additional training once they're on the job as well. So there's some funding issues there where we're dealing with, but that's going to lead to another subject when Dr. McCormick comes up to the podium again. Next slide, please. Here's what I love. Employers are committed to dual enrollment. So within the board, particularly the TCATs and the community colleges as well, our growth areas are dual enrollment and apprenticeship opportunities. They believe in early exposure to careers via dual enrollment is an excellent way for a young person to kind of plot that potential path that they want to follow. And I've had a couple note to me as well in this convening that sometimes it's just as important for a young person to figure out what they don't want to do early on as well. I mean, we all have stories of nursing students who enter our schools and the first time they go to clinical have to draw blood that nursing's not for me. Every one of us have stories like that. So we can figure that out at an earlier level. That would be great. Here's the other thing about dual enrollment, and Regent Spurgeon and I have known each other for years. We live in Jackson. Madison County is doing really well economically by all measures and everything. But even in Madison County, 40% of our graduating high school seniors will not pursue a post-secondary education at all. So we have to get them while they're still in high school via dual enrollment opportunities. Next slide, please. So you have kind of a call to action that's in your handout. Industry is ready to innovate and expand opportunities through apprenticeships, short-term workforce training, and dual enrollment. And there's indeed a need for additional support to pilot and grow these partnerships to upskill and reskill Tennesseans in all of these industry sectors, not just the ones we talked to. It's going to require a new level of coordination between the Board of Regents, Economic Community Development Offices, and Department of Labor and Workforce Development. So imagine those three entities working together, developing support structures, balancing with local hyper support from local chambers, Regent Hooper and your group, local chambers, state, everybody working together to focus on these. To help our Tennesseans, our residents, find the right training program that matches their goals and their aspirations on the job that aligns with employer needs. Next slide, please. So we have some initial recommendations that came out of this convening, a cross-agency working group. The Chancellor's been very involved in that, along with those commissioners. From TBR, ECD, Department of Labor, to kind of reimagine that regional and local support for employers that's sector-specific. And Dr. McCormick will have a great example of what we're doing with the ceramic tile industry, manufacturing industry, creating a data infrastructure necessary to support the growth of non-credit programs that these regional one-stop service teams will develop. So Regent Harold, to your point earlier, we don't have that at the board level. Some type of learning management system, we're working on that. We're going to have an ask to fund something like that with our workforce offices at our community colleges. And invest in the marketing and the communications needed to build the short-term, long-term awareness of opportunities and careers in key industries to support our local chambers marketing and to support our employers' needs to draw more skilled labor in. Next slide, please. So I'm going to pause there. Zachary and I are available for any questions that you may have related to the workforce meeting or the workforce convening. It was a great time. It was back in April. Governor Lee showed up and was absolutely in his element there with all those business and industry folks. Every college was represented. I think that was his favorite stop of the week. So I'll stop there. Regent George?
I believe we have a question down here.
Yeah, I mean, I can't not say that, particularly when you started talking about dual enrollment, why the Department of Education isn't engaged. We would love to be engaged in this work. Number one, to address some of these dual enrollment issues. How do we get kids ready for the pipeline? I think it's great that we're talking about how we can upskill our current workforce, but we are also very much responsible for building that pipeline for you guys. So I would just ask that we could be included, and I will make every opportunity to make sure that someone from, if not me personally, that someone from the department is there. We have this tremendous investment that was made with the Innovative School Models program, which really requires, again, these same kinds of partnerships for our districts themselves. They are all looking to, address the issues, those workforce issues that they have, not only in their communities, but for the state and as a whole. And obviously the partnerships with the TCATs and with the community colleges and with higher education are just so vital. So that would just be where I love to say we would love to be included in these conversations so that we are more holistically connected, particularly since we are also looking at creating some data resources and supports to help agencies like the ECD, Economic and Community Development, understand what kind of coursework we are offering through our CTE programs or through our academic programs that also fit for these employers. And so we are in the midst of internally just developing nothing real fancy or showy or anything, just really identifying where we have the coursework, where we can allow economic and community development to look towards this is what we're offering in our high schools. And then we can, because we're also looking at building out our career exploration work and pathways in the middle school. So we're really trying to address that holistic K-12 system to be prepared for you guys. So again, I would love to be engaged in the conversations as well.
Commissioner Reynolds, you are singing our hymn song, so thank you so much for that. We want to be engaged with you on this, so we really are excited to hear you say that. This charrette that was held this time the concept started out to make sure that we were teaching the critical concepts that these business industry people needed us to be teaching, and it grew into a much larger conversation because of them. So we welcome that opportunity. Thank you. You are knee deep in with us now, so thank you for that.
Just to follow up on that, yeah, locally, it's always with the school superintendents, but to your point, absolutely love working with Deborah Knoll, your assistant commissioner for CTE, specifically on Blue Oval City workforce pipeline and things like that. But the way that she's involved in what we're doing for Blue Oval City is a blueprint to do exactly what you're talking about doing. Thank you.
So I have a question. I'm sorry, go ahead. Dr. Sisk, was this the first type event like this that had been held, and do they plan to do this annually again?
So statewide, with that breadth and depth, I believe so. But we do this every day at the colleges meeting with our local employers like that, having those
like
conversations.
statewide.
But the first statewide convening, absolutely.
Ladies first. Thank you, Dr. Sisk. And Commissioner, when you and I first met, I said to you, you get it. And now you're leading it. So thank you so very, very much. And I'm reminded, too, of a lot of your presentation when Jeff McCord was Commissioner McCord. He and I had lengthy conversations about what we called the 200. So every year from Dobbins High School, 300 would graduate, knew what they were going to do. 200 had no idea.
Yep.
And we plotted and planned, and we both came up with all these ideas. And he finally simplified it. And he said, if kids can read on grade level by grade 3, and get a paycheck by age 16, they're going to be just fine.
Yep.
So we now have that quote inside our leadership quote wall inside our building.
Sir? So anything else?
That's all I have, Regent George. Thank you.
Okay, I thought Zachary was coming back up, but he's done.
Only if there was questions.
And I think we had the questions.
He's our apprenticeship guru at
Yeah.
TBR.
And he did a great job, and I just want to thank you and Vice Chancellor Kim McCormick for your dedication to workforce development. Thank you very much. Any other further business that needs to come to this committee? Hearing none, the Committee of Workforce Development for the Tennessee Board of Regents stands adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good reports, good information this afternoon. Regent Varland, you are up next as the chair of our External Affairs Committee.
Yes. Turn on my mic here. First of all, I'd like to call the Committee on External Affairs to order and ask Secretary Perry to please call the roll.
Regent DeWitt. Here. Regent Harrell.
Present.
Regent Powers.
Here.
Regent Spurgeon.
Here.
And Chair Lady Varland.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we get started, I want to do two things. First thing is welcome Regent DeWitt and Regent Harrell to this committee. We're so happy to have you. We're the best committee. So just telling you. No, but seriously, we really appreciate your, whether you were assigned or you chose us, we love you and we're glad you're here. The second thing I wanted to announce, in case some of you did not know, but that our Assistant Vice Chancellor for Strategic Development Advancement is not here today, Chris Perkins. He lost his brother, his younger brother, Aaron Perkins, this week, 48 years old, and he is with his family. I think the services are on Sunday, is that correct? And if you'd like to know more, Mariah can fill you in on some of that, and as well as where to send a card to Chris for his family. So we're really thinking of him and certainly miss him. He is just a ray of sunshine to all of us, and just we're all thinking about him, so thank you. Okay, consent agenda, revisions to TBR policy 9.01.03.00, advertising. So I think you've all, we've all talked about this. It was on the consent agenda, and I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Regent Sturgeon, and then second. Thank you so much, Matt. Let's see. Any discussion about that? No? All right. We just need a voice vote on this, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. The next thing, I'm going to call on our Executive Vice Chancellor for External Affairs, Kim McCormick, for an informational presentation and affirmation of the 2025 legislative priorities and strategic initiatives. Thank you so much, Vice
Thank
Chancellor.
you, Regent Barland. I promise today I will be the most concise and swift of anyone in all the committees. So we're going to start today with our legislative priorities and strategic initiatives. Can we switch slides? So you've seen these before several years in a row. That these are the 2025 legislative priorities that are, again, similar to those that we've had for the past, since Chancellor has been here, so 7-8 years now. These are the guiding principles for our government relations team. We want to make sure that we pursue that critical formula, capital outlay and equipment and program funding requests that our colleges so desperately need. We want to support the efforts to expand college access and affordability to all Tennesseans, further enhance safety and security of the system's faculty, staff, and 110,000 plus and probably more students as of this year. Advocate for those resources and the technical advancements that are needed for our campuses. Make sure that our institutions have that flexibility and the resources to be nimble, to be able to be responsive to the continually evolving curricular and educational trends across the nation, and to encourage the system-wide recruitment and retention, this is a critical one, of the appropriate faculty and staff that have that intense professional understanding and capability of teaching students. So those are our overarching priorities. Next, though, I would like to mention our strategic initiatives. These, I am not going over these in this committee. We will be going into detail on these during the Finance Committee meeting, but they are here for you to review. We need to have funding for the Customer Relation Management System, the CRM, expanding the workforce pipeline in Tennessee. Jeff alluded to that just a moment ago in his presentation. Cybersecurity, unfortunately, we need cybersecurity enhancements, student support network, and the community college workforce development revitalization that you will hear about from Dick Tracy in the next committee. So, particularly since we have new members on our committee, Regent Varlin, I want to talk just a moment about external affairs in our office.
Yes, please do. Thank you.
As you know, we have had 4 departments within the Office of External Affairs till now, but we now have 5, and I'm excited to also have someone to introduce, and that is Miss Vicki Bunch. She is out here. Vicki is our new Executive Director for the Tennessee Council for Career and Technical Education, which is administratively attached to the TBR system, but she's also doing much more work involving workforce development, working closely hand in hand with Dr. Sisk as well. So we are very fortunate to have Vicki. And I want to show you something, if we can go to the next slide. I know that Dr. Sisk has presented to you before our work in the ceramic tile industry, and this is just beginning and it's evolving, and we're working with the Department of Economic and Community Development in this work. We know that we have pieces of this industry across the entire state, starting over in the west part of the state with the ball clay mines where the clay is actually used to create the tile, and we move over to Middle and East Tennessee where tile is actually created and packaged and assembled and shipped across the state and the country, right, Regent George, on those trucks that we all see running all over the state of Tennessee. But I wanted to show you this because if you think about external affairs, our office, these 4 departments are very different. They all function very differently, but they all have the same mission. And that mission is to advocate and to support both our system office, our campuses, our students, but those external partners that we have across the state and other state agencies. So Regent Varlin, you haven't even seen this, but this is small, but it's kind of big to me. It's neat. But so Jeff Sisk, Dr. Sisk, and Dr. Matthew Gann teamed together because one of our coworkers at ECD is actually having to go to Italy. He's going to Bologna to present to a potential customer, a business that it is looking from Italy to come into Tennessee. So he needed information on the industry and what programs we at TBR offer in these particular tile industry programs. So they put together this document in English, and then also they actually put it together in Italian. So kudos to our marketing and digital strategy department for actually doing those translations. But this is just one very, like I said, very small example about how our departments work together and partner to be able to do the work that they need to do for external affairs. So, Madam Chair, with that, I will end unless there are questions.
Any questions?
I'd like to make a comment since 3 of us, Regent Burdine and Hooper, are involved in economic development, industrial recruitment every day. This is fantastic. That is good work, and look forward to seeing the other sectors that you identify. This will be very helpful.
Probably gonna steal it.
Well, the only mistake they made at ECD is they didn't invite us to go with them to Italy. I think they're there right now.
Seriously.
I know. So, Madam Chair, that concludes our report. Oh, we got a question.
Regent,
One question, the legislative priorities as they were included in the agenda, is this organized or prioritized in any way, or are they?
The strategic.
We need it all.
Oh, those that will require funding.
Yeah.
They are prioritized. But let me tell you where they come from.
Because, I think the slide was maybe a little bit different organization than.
So all of our presidents give input to the system office, to the chancellor. regents have, some regents come forth with different priorities. We hear from legislators, business and industry partners, and just maybe a couple of months ago now, Chancellor convened all of her senior staff. We spent the entire day going through all the different things that have been, were brought to us. And we were able at that point to weed those down to Chancellor's critical priorities. And she does prioritize those in the order that she feels they need to be.
Yeah, the list, the way that they're listed on your paper is my wish order. But now at this point, these are the ones that we have submitted to THEC. We don't know what will get picked up, that they might find as critical. And then we also have conversations with legislators to talk about what are some of the critical priorities as well.
And like she said, you'll get a little deeper dive in a few minutes from Dick
Right.
Tracy.
We're going to go into these during business and finance in detail and also talk about the fiscal impact that they each will have.
All right, Regent Harold?
What is the process? It goes from here to THEC. What's the process what's THEC's process to consider it, and then as it moves forward from there?
Yeah, so hello, Stephen Gentile again. The process at THEC, it depends on what is being put in front of us. If it's a systematic across all community colleges and TCATs, that'll be weighed differently than, say, a project that might be a pilot project that is for a 1 year or multi-year project. But it is our role to take what we hear from here, what we hear from our specialized units, which include ETSU, College of Medicine, TSU Ag, University of Tennessee system as well, for their institutions, and prioritize what are the needs for the state. So last year, Chancellor Tidings and this board approved cybersecurity for the community colleges, and we assessed it at our level and thought, what's good for the community colleges right now with cybersecurity is actually good for all institutions. We did an estimate of what that would cost for all institutions. We were not successful in making that recommendation to the state, but still we put it forward. This year, with the projects that you guys send us, we will prioritize them and provide feedback to TBR, the system. And we also intend to be transparent with the administration and the General Assembly as to all the requests that you sent us, whether we prioritize them or not, just so that they know what your needs are as well.
Vice Chancellor, do you mind to take just a moment for our two new members to introduce some of your folks, the
Sure.
legislative folks, and
Sure.
I know Chris isn't here, but if
Okay.
Matthew's here, whatever.
Okay, let me see who is in the audience.
Yeah, there's
John Williams is here. He is our Associate Vice Chancellor for Government Relations. And Matthew Gann is in the house somewhere. You can't miss him. He is a very tall person, and he is a very brilliant person.
Yeah, is the chief
But Matthew
here?
Gann. In fact, Matthew is the Associate Vice Chancellor for Marketing, Digital Strategy, and Web Design. We have Joel and Casati hiding over here in the back. They're like the Wizard of Oz back here.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
take care of all things web and do a wonderful job of putting
Yeah.
together the technical side of these meetings.
And I don't see Patrick. do you?
Carol is right here.
Yeah,
Everyone knows Carol Tomlinson. If you don't, you need to know Carol Tomlinson.
yeah.
She
you
works
do.
in the marketing department.
Yeah. We'll make sure you have an opportunity to speak to them and get to know them, because they are,
Yeah.
like she said, this is kind of different things on this committee, but it'll help
Yeah.
to help you understand what's going
I,
on.
s- I do see Lauren Sweeten here. She's the coordinator of external affairs. She keeps
there's
all
Lauren.
of us coordinated, and she
Yeah.
does a wonderful job helping with the board meetings, with the SOAR event, and you'll hear more about that at the next board meeting. So we have an amazing team. We just,
Yeah,
okay. Well, thank you.
yeah. Well, when we were saying that Chris Perkins is not here, he is, the SOAR guy. He's the chief fundraiser. We have a big committee for that, but in any event, you'll have a chance to meet him, and
And
we
then, of
also
course,
go together.
You met Jeff Sisk, who is also
Yeah.
in our department.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your indulging me in that. Is there any further business to come before the committee? Hearing none, I'll call the Committee on External Affairs for the Tennessee Board of Regents is adjourned.
Thank you, Regent Varlin. Regent White? It is up to you
All
to
right.
complete our task
Bring us
today.
home.
We'll bring her
Finance
home
and
then.
Business, that's
Great.
right.
Thank you. I'm calling the Committee on Finance and Business Operations to order, and I'll ask Secretary Perry to please call the roll.
Regent George,
Here.
Regent Harold,
Present.
Regent Kastner,
Here.
Chairman White.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, since we have a quorum, we will proceed with the first agenda item. And related to the consent agenda, members, please recall at the committee's chair meeting, we were briefed by General Counsel Lapps on the following policy item, and materials were provided in advance. Unless anyone has a question about a consent agenda item, we will act on this item with a voice vote. The consent agenda item is a revision of TBR policy 4.02.01.00, approvals of agreements and contracts. Does anyone have any questions pertaining to this revision? If not, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Second, thank you. This item requires a voice vote, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the motion passes. The second agenda item is the review of the fiscal year 2025-2026 legislative priorities budget request. And there she is, I hadn't seen her all day. Then I'll ask Vice Chancellor Fox to summarize the staff's recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The next slides will include our strategic priorities as presented just before this committee earlier by Executive Vice Chancellor McCormick. As you may recall, each year these priorities are presented in both the External Affairs Committee and then the Business and Finance Committee in more detail. And in this committee, we discuss only those that have a fiscal note attached during our presentation. So for FY 25-26, our legislative priorities include requests totaling roughly $456.3 million. $25.7 million of that is recurring, and $430.6 million is non-recurring. This priority request presentation will be a group effort today, and I will ask others to present briefly on their areas of emphasis. Next slide. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chancellor Heidi Lemming to discuss the first of our requests.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Reynolds, Chancellor Tidings, members of the board. You're going to see me 3 times during this presentation. It's the first effort that I'm going to share with you today, and that is our work around launching a customer relationship management system, or CRM. This is a $1.4 million request. So we have launched, with funding from the legislature in 2023, our efforts around a CRM, but this work really started several years ago. When we looked internally as a system at our investments in student success technologies more globally. We know that technologies are difficult to implement, and we have lots of technologies at a lot of our schools. So we did an inventory in 2020 of all the system technologies our schools were using. And at that time, determined that we needed to bring in a consultant to have a conversation with us about what our needs are and what path we needed to forge ahead with. So the ADA Center was brought in with funding from a private funder, and we did conversations with a lot of stakeholders at our campuses, our vice presidents for student affairs, as well as others on the front line, and really mapped out what we were looking for in a comprehensive platform, or a CRM. And across the bottom of the slide there, you can see kind of that path that we're looking for through a comprehensive technology that would serve our students through the entirety of their enrollment at our institutions. We did a competitive bid process in 2022 and procured Slate as our CRM. And when that was completed, we immediately sought out a TCAT CRM specialist, Robin Merrick, who is in the audience today, to implement that for our TCATs and start doing that implementation around a common application for the TCATs, as well as what that data infrastructure would look like. Then in 2023, we sought funding from the state to do this statewide with our community colleges and receive that funding. We are at the end of the first year of that funding cycle. And so today I'm really excited to show you what we've produced after 1 year's effort in this space. I keep doing the wrong one.
The Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology offer certificates and diplomas in many technical career fields that can have you workforce ready in months, not years. Your career begins here with the application process. Before we start the online application, let's review some general admissions requirements. To be admitted to a TCAT, you must be 18 years of age or have a high school diploma or its equivalent. So let's start with some preliminary homework. First, find a TCAT and program of interest. Then, complete the FAFSA for access to financial aid and scholarships. Finally, schedule a call with an advisor or schedule a campus tour to get any questions you may have answered. To get started, visit the website of the TCAT you would like to attend. On the navigation bar, you'll choose Future Students. Next, select Admissions from the drop-down menu, and then click the Apply Now button to begin the application process. You will be greeted with a login page. If you have never submitted an application before, you'll need to create an account by selecting First Time User. Or if you have an account, simply select Returning User to log in to your account. To create an account, you'll need to enter a working email address along with your name and birth date. After clicking Continue, you'll be taken to a page requesting a temporary PIN, which will be sent to the email you just registered with. Once you retrieve your temporary PIN, enter it and other verifying information to log in. Once logged in, you will be directed to a page to set your password. Follow the guidance on the page to create a strong password for your account. After setting your password, you'll be taken to your applications page. Here you can either start a new application or open past applications. Your first step will be to select your application type depending on your situation. Next, you will select the term you are applying for. Then, select Continue to move on to the next section of the application. In the next section, you'll provide your personal contact information. Depending on your answers, additional questions may appear. Please be sure to answer all fields that appear throughout the application process. Next, you'll complete the personal information section and click Continue when finished. In the next section, you'll be asked to describe the highest level of education your parents have completed. Under Education History, you'll be asked to list your prior education experiences, beginning with your high school. Click Add New to start the process. A pop-up window will allow you to add information about your high school attendance or GED completion. Click Save to close. If you wish to add any prior college experience, simply repeat this process and save to close. Once you are finished adding all your education history, click Continue. At this point, you will see a list of programs available at your chosen TCAT. Select your desired program. Depending on what you choose, new questions may appear. Answer those before clicking Continue. You will be asked if you have an affiliation with the military, with new questions appearing depending on the answers you provide. You may be asked to give permission for the TCAT to obtain a joint services transcript on your behalf. While not required for admission, checking this box may lead to possible college credit based on your military service. Next, complete the section on immunizations and click Continue when finished. You'll need to provide proof of your identity by supplying a copy of a valid ID, such as your Tennessee driver's license or a passport. You can do this through the portal or at a later time. Once you have completed all sections, you can provide an e-signature to begin the review process. Click Confirm when you are ready. After providing a signature, the system will review your application for any missing information. You may click on the section needing correction, or you can save for later and return at another time. Once you have corrected any errors, you may now submit your application by clicking Submit Application. Once you click Submit, you will be directed to an application status page, such as this one. If you've been asked to submit any documents, you may do that here. If not, your application is now complete. So, what's next? TCAT staff will review your application. If all admissions requirements are met, a decision code will be added to your application. Next, you'll receive an email about your acceptance, and a second email will be sent with instructions on activating a campus email address for future communications. After you receive your TCAT email address, you'll be able to access the TCAT student portal. Here, you'll find information about your application, financial aid, orientation, and other events and activities. As you can see, the application process is easy. Visit tbr.edu/start to find a TCAT and program near you, or contact your selected TCAT directly to learn more. At Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology, we build careers.
So this is just a sample of what the TCAT application looks like, but each of our community colleges also have the same technology. So I just wanted to give you a sample from our TCAT because we centralize that work as opposed to all the individual community colleges doing that work on their own. All of the community colleges have launched their application this month or will finish by the end of this month for the class of 2025. Our TCAT application went live in August, and already in the first month of being operational, we have over 5,000 applications. Most of those are for spring, but close to 2,000 are already for fall of 2025. So this technology is really helping us to do that outreach to students to help them complete the process. There's a lot of other tools behind this, and there's another short video I want to show you what the staff will see. Because one of the things that was really behind us securing this technology is the ability for our staff to have more kind of case management time with students on those high-touch cases, but automate and really individualize the communication that's going out to students through this process. And so this technology enables our staff to have more capacity in managing the enrollment process. So what I want to share is just, again, this is a sample. This is something that we're going to show you for the TCATs, but all of our community colleges also have the same capability. And so this just gives you a sense of why we really thought this was important to support our staff.
Let's look at the CRM after a student submits an application. For this purpose, we will focus on the TCAT Slate Shared instance. When a student submits their application, they are directed to a personalized portal as shown on the left, which provides campus details, updates on their application status, and an option to upload any additional materials required later in the process. They also receive an automated email confirming receipt of their application and outlining the next steps. Campus staff use single sign-on to access Slate, where they can complete tasks such as reviewing student records, generating applicant reports, sending communications to students, and managing upcoming tours and events. When running a report, staff can simply click on a student's name to access their record. From the student record dashboard, they can view key details such as contact information, event participation, and application submissions. For system staff, the dashboard also makes it easy to identify students who have engaged with more than one TCAT. From the student timeline, staff can view all communications with the student and see whether each message has been opened. If a message wasn't received, staff can easily resend it with a single click. The image on the right shows that this student has applied to 2 campuses. In this case, the applicant for a healthcare program used the upload option to provide immunization records and a copy of their diploma. All uploaded materials are saved in Slate and shared across all TCAT applications. Both campuses can access and review the documents, eliminating the need for the student to duplicate their efforts. If campus staff need to contact a student directly, they can simply click on the student's email address or mobile phone number to send a message. Once data is in Slate, retrieving it is simple. For example, a question asked on a form can generate a graph of the responses, helping campus staff make informed decisions. Slate will enhance relationships with high school counselors by enabling colleges to share specific applicant information. Through the free slate.org service, participating high schools can track their students' applications across all Slate partner colleges, upload transcripts directly to applications, and assist students with completing the enrollment process. counselors will have access to a dedicated portal where they can view every student from their school who has initiated an application with any Slate-affiliated college nationwide, making it easier to support their students through the admissions process. While Slate.org is currently available only to high school partners, TCATs are developing a similar portal for college access partners. This new platform will help these organizations assist students throughout the enrollment process, providing them with tools to offer more effective support. Slate has delivered numerous time-saving benefits for both campus staff and students. However, there is still ongoing work to achieve additional goals and fully leverage the software's potential.
So again, I just want to hone in on the fact that there is much more work to be done. This is just our first phase of development, but in the immediate future, we are looking forward to launching the high school dashboard access that will be part of this next year's effort. This is something that you saw in the video where the students who are applying to our colleges, the data that's in there, the high schools will have access through their own dashboard to see where they are in the process and the enrollment funnel. It'll also give them data about, who is actually applying to college, who's not, and then of course we'll have the data on our end as well. Eventually this sort of dashboard can be explored with other college access partners. And so this is really just an outline of what we're going to tackle during the second year. I think the most important thing for you to note here is that we are seeking permanent funding for the software platform, but we are also seeking funding for a centralized staff member at the system office that will support the community colleges. So we have someone for the TCATs, but we know, there's staff turnover. There's also lots of innovations that always happen with technology. So someone that can support the community colleges from the system level will help us as we think about other innovations we want to make to the software. And also, this is a team effort, and so I just want to take a little time also here at the end to just talk a little bit about the team. This, as I mentioned, started back in 2020. Any technology isn't just a plug and play. You have a lot of technical pieces you have to put together. And we have our CRM specialist, Robin Merrick, who's in the audience. Heather Brown, our director of operations, she really worked with the TCAT setup, but also with our community colleges. And Dr. Tiffany Stewart was really instrumental. And I cannot say enough for the campus staff. This is a huge lift. This is monumental, but it's also really important and is something that we had a vision for so many years ago, and we're so excited to see it finally come to fruition. We're really excited about this. This is going to be a game changer for us, and it took an entire campus team, IT staff, everyone to really pull together to pull this off. So we're really excited and hope that we secure permanent funding for this work. I'll be happy to take any questions, or I can turn it back over to Dr. McCormick.
I couldn't agree more about it being a huge process improvement. And so I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
There are, I guess, twice as many TCATs as there is community colleges. Sometimes I get confused trying to find the right TCAT in the right area. Is there anything in here that an applicant can locate the closest TCAT to where they live?
Right. So I think there's a lot of possibility there in terms of like they do geofencing even now with advertising and that sort of thing. So when you put your address in, if you don't know, it can supply you with the closest TCAT. Ideally, when we have an application with the community colleges, and maybe there might be a community college nearby too, and you're not sure even what programs, they would be provided with the resources to say, here are the schools in your area, and then they get messaging and marketing from all those schools. So this technology enables us to do what we call kind of through the inquiry process. Maybe they haven't decided yet. We can start sending them information about the programs and the schools closest to them.
Very good. So then my second question is, we've done a CRM in my business, and it was a very difficult process. But I think the most challenging thing that we had was how receptive the team was in working together. They all had their own little processes and programs. So how effective, how receptive has the staff been throughout the state of all the TCATs in working together and making this a success?
Yeah, so the advantage that we have is that we can centralize a lot of the technical work in support of the TCATs. And once we were able to start doing some things like text messaging and the communications pieces, and they saw that being tested out on their campus, we were winning people over.
Yeah.
They were like, wow, this is like helping us, right? It's helping our workload. And for the community colleges, we have what we call a community college community of practice. So they get on calls every month. And the nice thing about Slate is if one school decides, well, we're going to develop this new thing, they can suitcase it and share it with the other schools, and it takes the lift off the other schools to implement it.
Yep.
So they're actually learning from each other and taking ideas from each other so that it's making us more flexible, but also nimble in our implementation.
Yeah, well, great.
Yeah.
Great success. Good job.
Thank you.
I think.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think this was perhaps at the beginning of your question. It looks great, right? From this seat at least, it looks great. It seems easy to use. Did I understand right that once a student has selected which school they want to attend, they would go to that school's website to apply?
So right now, that is the process. They can go to the school that they want to apply to. I think what we envision is doing more in the admissions space where we do some outreach earlier on in the high school, where we're telling them what their options are to explore before they even make a decision about a school, so that they're getting that marketing material, the information about the school earlier to be informed.
If they, as it is today, say they apply for one TCAT, they're within driving distance of maybe 3.
Right.
And they decide I've applied here, I've gotten accepted, program hasn't started, the program I actually want to do is over here. How easy is it to transition?
You can transfer
that
that, yes, they can transfer the information. Actually, even if they put an inquiry with us, like we just have their basic information, it will go ahead and self-populate into their application. So when they start to apply, it'll eliminate some of those steps. Yeah.
I would like to, just not for now, but at some point, I would like to understand more about the application process.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm just going to say what I said earlier. Because, we are really coming together as a team to really think about pathways, right? Whether, again, taking advantage of the huge investments that the General Assembly and the governor have made with respect to getting kids on the right track on, in and off ramps and those sorts of things. This is definitely of interest. We've been talking as well. So, I just wonder if there's an opportunity for us to just really reconnect, kind of see what each of our projects are. Because again, the easier we can make it for kids, particularly, junior and high school seniors. What did I say? Juniors and high school seniors.
Right.
The better, right? And especially if we're all working together. So I hope that we can continue working and figuring these things out together. Because I don't want us to go in and be like, well, we're going to ask for this dashboard. And it's like, well, TPR is already doing something. So how do we all kind of come together?
Sure.
And THEC as well, and think about maybe more of a uniform application process, maybe uniform, just opportunities that create more of a one-stop shop instead of us kind of piling on top of each other and asking for different pots of money. So.
Yeah, and that's great because we have been talking about ways that we want to connect with the Department of Ed, or it's particularly around what we would like to do around some direct admissions work. And so we've been so focused on getting the technology in place. It takes a little while to do that and get it out the gate because we had this funding right now that we needed some successes. But I think it has so many possibilities, and that is certainly in our brain what we're thinking about.
Absolutely. And what we're really hoping is to have a statewide approach to this, because right now it is a county to county approach. We really, really hope we can all sit down at the table, and so systemically across the state we are all doing the same thing with regard to this. So that's been the conversation we've been having, and music to our ears, so thank you.
That last go back to can you go back to the next one? Yeah. Campus communication templates provided by marketing team. What does that mean?
So there is some research on how you message to students, how it makes an impact on how they respond. For example, we've done some work around mindset and how you use positive language as opposed to deficit language in talking to students about what the possibilities are. So we work with the marketing department to draft the kind of template of, you plug in the student's name and some specifics, but this generally is the content they need to receive at certain points in the enrollment process. So we draft that for them so that it makes it easier.
But it's not in the community college? It's not?
So some of that is occurring at the community colleges. What's different with the community colleges, because of course they're structured differently, each of them has their unique kind of focus. They, a lot of times in their strategic enrollment management work, have already developed a communication plan with their own marketing office. And so they're implementing that maybe in different ways at each
Okay.
campus.
So that's right, community colleges have their own marketing person, but
Right.
TCATs do not.
Right.
So, so TBR has to do that for the TCATs.
Yes, we gladly
Okay.
do that for them, yes.
Okay. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but is there a way, I mean, are the TCATs getting what they need from TBR, or is there a way of supplementing?
I know Matthew talks with them quite regularly about, marketing needs and that sort of thing.
Okay,
But they have their own marketing group that they meet and talk.
okay. I just remember when, years ago, there used to be somebody that came around and called, several TCATs shared that person. And I don't know what happened to that person, but it's been a while. You remember that?
Well, and Matthew and his team do that for everybody now.
Okay.
And when they develop things, Matthew will do it, and I don't see where Matthew is, but he would rather speak to this than me. But what he'll do is develop the template, and then the college personalizes it to their area, to what they need.
Okay.
But he comes up with the overall look and feel of it. So we've got that consistency across the state. We do want it to be TCAT, a statewide system, but we also want people to know that that's TCAT Northeast, that's TCAT Hartsville. That is, their college, and
Yeah.
that's where they're going.
Well, some of where this is coming from, just being transparent, last night we were at dinner, a bunch of us sipping on a few bourbons, and Matthew was there, as were some of the regents and some of the TCAT presidents. So I was asking some of these. So I was asking some of these questions, but we never finished the conversation. So when I saw it right there, I thought I'd bring it up. So thank you.
I have one question too, if I
Sorry.
could. What happens without this funding? I understand you've got a great proof of concept, you've got a great solution that we can continue to bring in the other partners. So without this additional funding, we can't get the community colleges on the same platform, or we can't.
Now, the community colleges have launched with the initial investment from the state.
Okay.
I think our challenge will be they'll have to find that money in their budgets to sustain this work.
Manage the software.
And we would like an additional person to support the community colleges, which we don't have right now. Yeah.
There is a reoccurring yearly cost to this, and so that's what we're asking for now, is the money to maintain that reoccurring cost that comes through.
Is that a subscription-based cost? Is that how that operates?
Like
the structure of it?
I'm sorry.
Is it a
Is
subscription?
it a subscription-based cost?
Yeah, so it's like an annual cost for the platform, yes.
One quick question. I noticed when you were pinging through the example of how one applies, a question leapt out at me, and it was, what's the highest level of education that your parents have attained?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that is an potentially intimidating turnoff question for somebody who thinks maybe they're not worthy enough. I mean, are you gonna, you have the ability to modify all these things as you go through time?
Well, we do have the ability to modify the questions, but the reason why we're asking that question is because we've done a deeper dive around first-generation college students.
Right.
And there's some data that suggests, like, if we know that they are the first-generation student, we can actually target them with, like, additional supports.
No, I
So that's why
understand.
we asked that question.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a laudable objective. I just wonder, does it cause some people to maybe say, yeah, maybe this isn't for me? I don't know.
I don't know. We can certainly look at that, but I feel like our colleges feel like that is worthwhile for us to give them those supports and ask. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So in this particular ask that we have, our strategic initiative, Regent Burton, I think I can answer some of your question about the marketing side of it. This is a $5.95 million recurring ask to expand the workforce pipeline in Tennessee with a $550,000 non-recurring. I'll go into that just a little bit. We all know, those of you from are running our chambers across the state, those of you who own your own businesses all know that what businesses are saying across the state when they're either coming in or expanding is, where's your workforce? I need to be able to hire people to come into my facility and work, people who are highly skilled, highly trained. And we know that is also very critical to our current administration, our governor, and our General Assembly. So we want to be able to take what we currently have, the Center for Workforce Development, and expand that into a larger system, a larger center that supports all of these colleges across the state of Tennessee. Our colleges do the training. We at the system office support, but it's not just the training here that we're asking for. This funding is about marketing, promoting, recruiting, training, and finding folks jobs. So a great deal of this ask will be that very money to help the TCATs who don't have their own marketing departments market their programs and also to recruit. It also will support short-term training, and I'll be back up in a minute to talk about an ask that we have for short-term training. But it also will provide us the ability to build out a database to be able to track all of the workforce training that's sufficiently track it, that is occurring across the system, the companies that we are working with, the actual industry sectors that those companies represent, which colleges are doing what, and also to be able to help students have a way to document that particular training. And at this point, I want to stop just a second and let Dr. Lemming come up and talk about another piece of this, which is a comprehensive learner record.
All right, this is number 2 for me. This is another student success technology that was funded by the legislature in 2023 for us to take to scale. We've been doing some pilot work for about 5 years in this space. I know that we have a lot of new board members and others in the audience that might not know what a learner record is, so I just want to do a little level setting here, and then we are going to show you a demo of what's been built in this first phase of the work. The learner record really is a way that we're articulating the student learning that occurs at our institutions in a very meaningful way that would be expressed in an electronic transcript, but not like your traditional transcript. It really is, it's not only verified as authentic, so it's in real time and can be transferred and across multiple platforms, but it really is that official record of the students' maybe learning outcomes at the program level, experiences that they've had like apprenticeships, other kinds of high impact practices they're engaging in at the campus, and then that can be shared with their employers. So in real time, they can show them evidence of their learning that we think is going to help communicate the value of their degree, their certifications, their credentials. So this, of course, is our first effort as a system nationally. We are going to be the first system to do this. So we're branding our CLR. We're going to call it the TBR Cred. So this is our logo that we'll be using. We'll be referring to our CLR as the TBR Cred moving forward. So when students are being referred to their TBR Cred account, that's what we're talking about. And then employers and others will be referred to TBR Cred, as that's our learner record. We are part of a larger digital ecosystem here, so we are just one piece of this. You're going to hear a lot probably in the coming years around digital credentials, whether they're in K-12 or other career opportunities, military service, all of that can be entered into an electronic learner record. So the work that we do can be influenced by the other sectors, but also we can influence those around us with these learner records. And so I just wanted to show you that this is a much bigger piece of work other than just what we're doing here in our system. And these are the different types of achievements that can be placed on a learner record. So you can see there the whole list. Out the gate after this first year of effort, we are focusing on things like certifications, courses, degrees, competencies and skills, those experiential high impact practices. But in phase 2 of the work, we'll tackle some of those other achievement types that are listed here. And you may be wondering, how does this connect when we talk about all the work we've been doing around the student experience and connections with workforce? And this was cited earlier in presentations around that employer survey that AAC&U does, and there was mention around the 7 core competencies of the general education curriculum. This is the same survey, but different focus. You know, one of the things that I went out in August to all of our community colleges to emphasize with the faculty is that the work of high impact practices is so tightly woven into this project because we know employers are looking for these skills out of graduates. And it's a one for every one of our high impact practices. So when you look at leadership roles or work study positions, apprenticeships, those are high impact practices that we have been coding for 10 years. We have 10 years worth of data in our student information system that can now be articulated out into this electronic transcript for others, including the students, to share with employers about their learning. And one particular note on that survey that AAC&U did is that employers say when these skills are showing up, they know that entry-level applicants have these skills, they rise to the top of their application pool, particularly around micro-credentials. And that, again, is something that we're coding for that will show up on our learner record. I'm not going to go into the high impact practices specifically. We have a website if you want to see what those are, more deeper dive on the definitions of what they include, resources. We have badges that faculty can download to include on their course syllabi when they're offering these high impact practices in their courses. But I just wanted to reference that again. The learner record is kind of the capstone to the work we've been doing around high impact practices. It's bringing it in to that kind of visual documentation that can now be shared out with others about the students' participation in these practices. So with that, we will
Welcome
introduce
to the
CLR.
Tennessee Board of Regents Comprehensive Learner Record, a purpose-built credential to allow students at TBR institutions a comprehensive record of their unique learning that is secure, portable, and useful. After initial pilot testing, TBR is ready to roll out implementation of this digital record. Institutions identified their top 5 programs and worked in teams to collect the data necessary to build this complete record. With many systems of record for students at our institutions, it is understood that credentials are often complex. For this reason, TBR has selected the One EdTech Comprehensive Learner Record, CLR, standard as a universal transport mechanism. This allows credentials following many different standards, including W3C Verifiable Credential, the One EdTech CLR 1.0 and 2.0, and the One EdTech Open Badge 2.0 and 3.0, to be ingested into the system, giving TBR students and those issuing and receiving credentials maximum flexibility. Today, I invite you to follow along with a student at a TBR institution, Jeffrey, as he collects, displays, and verifies his newest credential in an LER wallet. LER wallets can be integrated with different login methods, so Jeffrey is able to easily sign into his account. Once logged in, he sees his home screen containing all of the credentials he has previously collected. To add a new credential, Jeffrey comes up to this list of import options and selects Import a Credential. He selects the correct credential and adds it to his wallet. Now you see the credential displayed in Jeffrey's wallet. To see the details of his credential, Jeffrey clicks on the credential details. Making these credentials useful to our Tennessee students is important. After we have created CLRs and issued them to students, we will consider ways that students can extend the use of this digital record. That may be collecting their credentials into a digital wallet that can act as a place to store all of the evidence of their learning and achievements. Students may want to use these credentials for many purposes across many organizations, ecosystems, and government agencies. For example, Jeffrey now wants to use this credential in his Smart Resume to apply for a position. From his Smart Resume account, Jeffrey chooses Add a section to his resume. He selects which credential he wants to share and confirms his selection. This credential award is now available for Jeffrey to share with employers in his Smart Resume. Tennessee Board of Regents Comprehensive Learner Records, giving students digital evidence of their learning and achievements in meaningful and useful ways.
So first year, we wanted to capture the greatest number of students, so we focused on the top 5 programs for our community colleges. You see on the screen there, largely that is consistent across all of our community colleges. There's a few exceptions, but we captured the learning outcomes at the program level for each of those areas. And for our TCATs, because we have a common curriculum, we were able to do it for all of their programs. So we have that entered into our banner system, and this platform will connect with our student information system to pull that out in meaningful ways on that learner record. And so we'll be doing the final pilot testing to students this fall and then be launching that to students who are in those top 5 programs in the spring. We'll tackle the remaining programs in our second year of implementation. And we also wanted to share with you that part of the conversation, we hear the conversation around digital wallets. Many of you probably have credit cards or memberships who are, in your Google Wallet or your Apple Wallet. We are working to have our credential, our TBR cred, available to go into whatever wallet platform a student would choose. And so you can see here on the screen, we've had some conversations already around, so there is a MyTN Services platform. You may or may not know that the state has invested in collecting some of these digital records. Like for example, here you can see like an ABC license. If you own a business and have an ABC license, it could go in that digital wallet. So we've talked with them about having our TBR cred in that platform available to all Tennesseans, so that it's again showing if you attend a public, technical, or community college, you would have this availability to have the credential in a wallet. And Montlo did some initial pilot work as well on around a credential, so you can see how they had their credential in their wallet. It's the same concept. And so we're building on that this second year so that we can make that available in very kind of public ways. The other piece of that is we are participating in a pilot with the state of Alabama. There's a lot of work around how, if you left the state, those credentials could go with you into other wallets at other states. The state of Alabama has developed their own wallet. And so what we're going to be testing now is using one of our TCAP programs and the credentials that would go into our TBR cred wallet, how that could go across state lines. And so once we figure out the technical infrastructure on that, we'll be able to really look at how nationally we share credentials digitally across state boundaries. And so that'll be the next phase of this work. And we're seeking permanent funding for us to, again, keep the wallet, the TBR cred funded past 2025 in this budget request. Any questions?
Yeah, Dr. Lemming, how many employers are familiar with this?
So that'll be part of our roadshow that we'll be doing once we get the credentials out to students. There's going to be a whole marketing campaign behind this because the students will have to learn, what this is as well. I already introduced it to some of the faculty at all of our schools this fall that it's coming, and we'd have to have partnerships with folks to really kind of explain what this is.
Yeah.
One of them, we've had some initial conversations with some of the larger industries, in our planning stages, and so it's really the next step of that is how they might take these credentials and ingest them like through their HR systems. And so there's a lot of national conversation about this. A lot of employers excited, Walmart and some of the bigger corporations have been investing dollars in this, where they would be very interested in, let's say, a student who earns certain credentials, clicks a button, says, I'm interested in sharing that I have this with employers, and then they could do an outreach to say, we're looking for people with your credentials for jobs in our industry. So that's kind of the next phase of it, but you got to start somewhere, right? You got to have something that employers can start connecting with, and so that's why we need and a lot of individual institutions around the country have done learner records, but nobody's done it as a system. So we really can say that we're going to be the first as a whole state, and that's why Alabama and even Kentucky are kind of looking at how we can maybe partner to transfer those credentials across state lines.
I don't know what you said that reminded me to ask this question, but do we still offer the warranty?
We do, and that is going to be part of this as well. So
Okay.
it'll go digital as part of the learner
Okay.
record.
And last time I heard a report on this, nobody's filed a claim? Is it?
Not a valid claim, no. Okay, I'll turn it back over to Dr. McCormick.
Thank you, Dr. Lemming. What Heidi just presented is one piece of this ask for expanding the workforce pipeline, but you all, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into all the different components. Ma'am, oh, sorry. I won't go to all the different components of it, but it is in your documentation. What this funding is really, it's asking for dollars for building out curriculum, marketing, and promoting. I can't stress that enough. Also for equipment that is necessary so that if ECD goes out and talks to a potential let's go to Italy where we were before, and they're talking to a potential client, a company that is wanting to come into the state of Tennessee, they will be able to say, our Tennessee Board of Regents colleges can handle this training for you. And we will have people set up regionally to be able to assist those colleges in those efforts. But a piece of that, the second piece of that is a lot of what we were just talking about is obviously short-term training. Jeff Sis mentioned those people training to do IVs who are already employed, but they need upskilling. That short-term training is not covered by financial aid, either from the federal or the state level. So, you know, we're talking about linemen, heavy equipment operators, IV techs, people who are in many of the different medical fields. They don't have that opportunity, and some of that training can be quite costly. And we have, frankly, we have Tennesseans out there who are trying to work with small children. You know, they have a job, but they would really love to be able to upskill to have a better lifestyle for their families, and they can't because they can't pay the $5,000 to go get this training. So what we're asking here for is short-term training funding. We're requesting $9 million recurring for that particular ask. We had an ask last year. In fact, we had a legislator who was carrying a bill to try to do this, and it made it all the way through all the committees until it got to the end, and it did not make it into the budget. But we have lots of champions in the General Assembly that do feel strongly that this is something that really needs to be examined. And back, one more thing, I don't mean to hijack here, Alicia Fox, but when we go back to what we were talking about in our committee and these strategic initiatives, I think Regent Harrell asked me about what our legislative initiatives are. Right now, we don't have anything that we know of that would require us to go out and seek legislation. However, we do have members of the General Assembly that are going to hold caption bills for us in case something were to come up. Okay. All right, Dr. Alicia Fox.
Can I ask one quick question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right here. Over here. On the short-term training fund, that $9 million recurring, are we asking for that out of a specific, are we asking that just that general fund money? Is it promise money, lottery money? Does it matter? Are we indifferent to where it comes from?
We will just take it from wherever it comes. Right.
But the discussion has been with the lottery money, and that was where it fell short in the budget request last year, because it was looked at as a lottery fund.
Right.
Stephen, you want to jump in?
Just real quick, to this one in particular, my office and Department of Labor Workforce Development and Department of Education have been working for some years to get in statute a definition of quality non-degree credentials, anticipating a time like this when there might be some financial aid that goes towards it so that we can identify what are quality programs like that the state could possibly think about putting financial aid towards. So in that regard, that landscape had been filed last year for this.
You know, I can add one more thing to it is the Road Builders Association. They have been working with us closely. Kent Starwalt, their executive director, they desperately need people who are heavy equipment operators. And so that not only helps the road builders across the state, but every different business that needs, earth moved. So that's a big need out there as well. And they're champions for us in this effort.
Kim, just to put an example around this, at TCAT Chattanooga, they had the situation where the auto mechanic folks, a lot of them couldn't afford the very expensive equipment that they needed, and so a lot of automobile dealers in Chattanooga got together, raised the money to buy the kits. Is this an example where would this type money be used in those types of situations where, a student needed some kind of specialized equipment in order to get the training and get their certificate to?
Well, this definitely would cover the cost of the tuition, obviously, for the student. And we always try to look first to business and industry to donate that particular equipment that is necessary. We haven't set parameters, I think, Chancellor, yet on what we think that funding could particularly go for, but that's probably a possibility.
Okay.
All right, so I am back again, and this may look familiar to you. This is one of our only recurring asks that we had last fiscal year that didn't quite make it to the finish line. As Stephen mentioned earlier, THEC was gracious enough to pick it up and then expand it for all of higher ed in their request, but it didn't quite make it to the finish line last year. So I'm here again presenting our cybersecurity enhancement needs with a request of $8.9 million recurring. So as you know, cybersecurity is a critical need for our colleges in the system office. Higher education entities are high value and frequent targets of cyber attackers because they host large amounts of sensitive student and employee data. The longer a breach goes undetected, the more difficult the recovery and the greater the cost. In the immediate aftermath of attack, restoring operations to the campus can be the primary or sole task for most administrators. Almost every form of communication with students and faculty is shut down. Student access to learning materials and tools is decreased, at least temporarily. The job of faculty becomes much more difficult, and there is inevitably a loss of learning, a significant risk of decreased enrollment, and increased chances of students not completing their studies. It is critical that TBR colleges have the necessary tools to prevent as many attacks as possible and the ability to detect and respond to a successful attack as quickly as possible. Educational opportunities for our communities are essential service, and our colleges can't risk downtime or the amount of money and time needed to recover from a successful attack. $3 million of the recurring request will allow TBR to hire a full-time CISO, or Chief Information Security Officer, 1 additional IT auditor, and 2 security specialists at the system office, as well as provide funding to hire additional security specialists to monitor and provide cybersecurity at all of our TCATs and community colleges. Given that database security and third-party service security are 2 of the largest cyber risks, $5.9 million recurring would allow for the procurement of standardized security monitoring and intrusion testing software for all of our colleges within the system, as well as hardware improvements such as firewall and server upgrades. This would also allow for the expansion of our TBR system office IT capabilities, increasing the capacity to provide standardization and redundancy across our ERP maintenance and operational functions at all of the colleges within the system. So that is my cybersecurity update. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have about this initiative.
I'm glad to see you're requesting money to add those personnel, but my guess is another year, that's not going to be enough.
Yeah, and this is just a start. But yes, I think this would be a good start. It comes out to with the CISO and then the auditor and the specialist. There's about, we've included about 15 security specialist positions in addition to the CISO and the auditor. So it'd be about 17 positions in total.
Are we growing our own specialists, training them and hiring them?
Currently, yes.
Good.
Yep. So I'll be happy to turn it over to Heidi again for her last and final item.
All right, well, I want to start with just a reflection question. I want you to sit with this question for a second. And that is, when you think about what led you on your professional journey and what supported you along the way, who are those people? And as you sit and reflect on that question, I think many of us call to mind people who maybe were teachers or faculty members who supported us academically, but also folks who maybe watched our children while we went to class, or family members who gave us money for rent or food or other living expenses, or maybe even a personal mentor who just helped guide us along the way. It's the idea of how there's a wider network of people who support us in our pursuits that's at the heart of the Tennessee Student Support Network. The desire to do more in this space is grounded not only in the realities of our students and their facing their financial situations, but the recognition that as a community and technical college, we largely serve low-income and adult students. And a lot of their financial barriers go beyond what state aid like Tennessee Promise or Reconnect can cover. To the point that we really need to look at, nationally, there's a lot of data that suggests that students who have their basic needs met are more successful in their student outcomes. And that is done through a lot of different sources of funding. This is particularly challenging for students who maybe are on the non-credit side, as we've been talking about today, who aren't eligible for many services associated with paying tuition and fees at our campuses. So this past year, we've been working with 3 institutions and 3 partner state agencies to pilot our Tennessee Student Support Network. The vision for the network is to test a theory of change that when combining our resources and training, we can identify additional areas of opportunity to serve Tennesseans who may benefit from enrolling in our institutions but are facing these external barriers to doing so. Or they're Tennesseans who are currently enrolled but are at high risk of dropping out before completion due to extenuating circumstances outside the classroom. So what are the holistic supports that we're considering as part of this network partnership? It includes items that are non-academic support, but also career and academic supports, as well as policies, both at the institutional level and within our state agencies, that need to be examined for better alignment to not only provide for the supports that the students need, but access to those supports. We're thinking not only about basic needs that we know are first order things that students have to have in order to enroll and be successful, but also navigating social service eligibility, healthcare, mental health, and other coaching and mentoring services. So we have 5 ambitious but very realistic goals for this work. Overall, again, our pilot is testing a theory of change on how a network model can decrease the burdens of poverty and bring a sense of well-being and connectivity to the students who face these unique barriers that are standing in their way of completing a post-secondary credential. So our first goal is obviously the timely and accessible and comprehensive basic needs resources available to our students, but also thinking about the process improvements in our agencies and our institutions that need to be made in order for students to access these resources, including growing their awareness of what's available through the different state agencies for support, and having a very targeted case management approach to help each individual student navigate those basic services. And finally, data sharing between our agencies so that when students are using these services, we can measure the impact of their access to those services in support of their completion. So as we think about the trajectory of this work, you can see we did our planning last year, and this year we've already worked with our campuses on providing several workshops to identify areas of opportunity and training for all of our schools on state resources and the eligibility criteria with our different partner state agencies. We were invited to be a partner at the National Skills Coalition meeting where they focused on holistic needs for students on the non-credit side, and that certainly gave us more ideas to consider as we think about the second phase of this work in the coming year. And we've also applied for several national grants to see if we could get additional funding to help us take this to scale. But we're now seeking $450,000 in recurring funding in this budget request so that we can try to get some additional staff to help us take it beyond the pilot stage and really give us the capacity that we need to do that data sharing. And one of the things that I want to mention is this does connect back to the CRM that I mentioned first this afternoon. Through the CRM, we have the capability to leverage downloadable reports to partnering agencies on students who maybe meet with a Tennessee Student Support Network professional, potentially, who's applying for benefits, the results of that, and automating those messages to students about what they're eligible for these services, and that can be done through our CRM. So the next phase of this work is really to flush out that evidence of impact for the network, and again, that effectiveness. There's a lot of national data, but we need Tennessee-specific data to help guide us on what needs to be focused on in the second phase of this work. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, but that is our request.
I'd just like to interject here that this is based on the work that we've been doing with the Department of Labor in sharing data and being able to make sure that we have that real-time data fed into the system. What we realize is that many of these students are clients of both of us. And so they need to be getting a consistent message from both of us so that they can take full advantage of any opportunities that are out there. Many of our community colleges do an incredible job of working with their students, but our number one mission is to teach them what we need to be able to teach them. By partnering with these other agencies, they can do what they do best. And that's providing all of those external resources that are provided for within our state system. So what we want to leverage the best of the best that the state of Tennessee has to offer for our students and make sure they have that information.
I'd like to add so many times I've heard comments and presentations in the word interagency collaboration and partnerships. And if it's a company working at Tennessee or someone that lives in poverty, they don't care how many organizations they are. They just want to get through the system. So just congratulations to everybody that's doing that, because you're making life a whole lot easier for people that use these services provided by the state.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. One of the items that we're looking at as a strategic initiative is basically the reimagining of community colleges. And as we're finishing up the statewide master plan for the TCATs, we've been evaluating the community colleges and looking at a statewide strategic plan. And this goes back some time in working and doing the master plans with the community colleges, especially the rural community colleges. We saw slower growth or either minimum growth at those because the population has not been growing in those areas. So we were looking at how those colleges would have to continue to compete for the students that would just show up in the past because of a lot of the other opportunities they have. In looking at that and in talking with the administration, they're asking about how the community colleges can basically serve the community industry similar to the TCATs. So we started looking at the campuses through this, and right now we're undertaking some individual master plans at the community colleges, and we're in the process of starting some other master plans. But as we looked at that and we looked at the facilities, and the community colleges were all built in the 60s and 70s, and they had a specific purpose. And so looking at that, and I'll give you an example, here at Dyersburg State, if we were looking at offering a program that for industry training, workforce development, we don't have the space here. So as we looked at the campuses, we looked at whether they needed additional space, and it would be it may be adding some high bay space. We looked at a lot of renovation at these colleges, and we looked at the possibility of having to replace existing buildings. The buildings that we have at the community colleges aren't very flexible for us to make those changes when we're looking at going out and recruiting industry and being able to add the programs or change for programs that the local community needs. And so as we looked at across the campuses, in our first kind of evaluation, we identified at each campus the need for either some renovation, some replacement, and some additional space. And so as we develop that across those, we're looking at about the $430 million would allow us to do that. And again, the goal of this is to be able to address the issues for workforce development and the communities that the community colleges have, similar to the TTCs or the technology colleges. So this wouldn't add new campuses like we did in the past. This would be looking at their existing locations. We may look at some of their satellite campuses because, some of the satellite campuses over time, they have grown that probably have more students than the main campuses. So this would be addressing an issue at each of the community colleges to allow them to be more competitive in the workforce development and training of their campuses.
And if I might just interject, I don't want my community college presidents or my TCAT presidents to be out there dying. We are not replicating TCAT programs on the community colleges sites. What we're doing is hopefully to provide the space where they are doing these types of training now, but in buildings that were never designed to do this type of training in. And each one of them have a need, except for TCAT Chattanooga, and we know that they have the TCAT that's right there, and they've been able to grow in a way to accommodate the majority of what they needed in that. So what they need is some space that's just repurposed in a different way. Dick did a great job of going out and meeting with each one of the community college presidents and going over their master plan to see what we needed to do for the future. And if y'all will recall, Dick had done that for our technical colleges several years ago, which is the reason why we were able to be so successful with the 1.5 billion in technical college buildings that we've received. The master plan was built out. That's what this purpose is to get this built out so that our community colleges can do the training at the associate degree level that they need to be doing. So just wanted to make sure everybody, because I could see some of my technical college presidents
Yes.
going, what?
No, and that Chancellor's correct. So in a lot of this, again, is to build space that's flexible. So if the community colleges need to adapt for new programs, we can do that. And right now that is difficult. We're looking at some of their existing lab facilities that need to be renovated, you know, to be able to offer those types of programs. So there's a lot of things that we'd like to do in this. And again, some of it's renovation, some of it's adding space, but we're not looking at increasing the overall footprint of the community colleges because we're trying to be more flexible and more efficient with the space that we have at each of our campuses.
I thought the budget was $1 billion for expansion, and does this get us to $1.5 billion, or
No,
is this $1.5 billion
actually,
plus another 400?
Over 3 years, it's been 1.5 billion.
Oh, okay,
Last year it was $1 billion,
This
but
is
I
a-
like to count that other $500 million.
okay. So this gets us to $2 billion.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Doesn't get you what it used to.
Hi, Dick. Is this a capital outlay project?
This would be capital outlay, yes.
Does it have a master plan yet, or is that something you're going to be working on?
So the components are part of are within the master plan, but some of those we're right now working on the new master plan. So we're addressing those with the current master plans that are ongoing. Some of them we have identified in the previous master plans, and then again there's 2 or 3 that we're bringing forward to start the new master plans. But these components are within what the request for the new master plan is going to be.
Okay, and how would TBR staff prioritize this compared to the 5 submitted through our process for the capital outlay process?
We put them all at the top.
From on the top, okay.
This is in addition to those projects that we submitted under our
Yes,
capital
correct.
outlay plan. This is the long-range master plan of what needs to be done.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Very supportive of the concept of renovating our community colleges and making sure they're appropriate for have state-of-the-art facilities to do the things that we need to do for the employers and the industry. Know that we have to have that capacity and that it's needed to fulfill the needs of the companies that are moving here and the companies that already exist here and want to grow their businesses. That said, and I'm the newbie here, so I'll stand back and admit that. And there are probably a lot of things I don't understand about this, but and I'll also say that I majored in history, not math. So with all those caveats, we've got $500 million roughly in spending requests between recurring and non-recurring in the year, and I think all of these are worthy causes. The number that stood out to me, the thing that stood out to me in all the conversation we've had today, what stood out to me the most was that 1 in 4 on-time completion rate in the community college. That's the number that stood out to me the most. And like I said, I majored in history, not math, but if our goal is ultimately that 55% of people would have a post-secondary degree of some kind, and we're graduating 25% on time, there's virtually a 0% chance that we hit that goal. I mean, just by the numbers,
really
it's
important
really
part
low.
of what you just said was on time.
On time,
That
sure.
does not mean they're not graduating. That
Sure.
just means they're not graduating within that time frame of on time. And tomorrow, during my chancellor's report, we're going to go over all of those numbers for you. And that was what Dr. Deaton alluded to earlier. So the exciting meat of that will be tomorrow to show you what happens with the students.
Yeah, and that's totally fair.
Yeah.
Totally fair. And understand the nuance of that. I guess what I'm trying to say is understanding that and understanding the need of all this and very supportive of this as I think about it going forward in the coming years with all the great work that's happening at the community college level and the TCAP, really appreciative and grateful for all the work, and I know that we're making a lot of progress. That number's really frightening to me to think about, right? It just is. And so that's the thing that I think about in terms of how we're spending. Really glad to see the money for the supports, the student supports. That's a great idea. I love that. And so I hope that as we're meeting these needs on the fiscal plant side in the previous years, in this coming year, as we look to the future, we start looking, and I'm sure, I don't mean that to say that we're not looking there. We are. I know that we're looking there. But that's just, in my mind, the thing that stood out to me from our conversation today.
Hey, Jeremy, I know you are the new guy, but it's kind of funny. I went a year and I didn't say a thing. And then I nodded when Emily told me to nod and shook my head when she said shake my head. So you're on it, man.
You know, and one of the things we're looking at on the renovation, and I understand, is at the community colleges, this is something I've looked at for the 25 years that I've been here, that community college students are different than the university students I worked with, and they're different than the technology college students. And sometimes they need a little more assistance. I mean, and so one of the things we're looking at as part of this and reimagining the community colleges and the renovation is around the student success. And we talked about, and I think the other things that we're talking about, but having spaces where the student can come in and it's a welcoming space. And, you know, you go to the campuses. So if they come in, we have a place that they can go and we can help assist them or to direct them to programs. So in looking at that and how the TCATs get involved is that where we have a TCAT like what will be at Roane State or the one next to Roane State, is if they come in, it's a seamless process that they come in and we can help guide that student to a program that we feel they're more suited for. So a lot of this is about the workforce, but I think what we're looking at is how can we, and looking at the changes in the students that you have today than 25 years ago, and what do we need to do to help assist those to get them in and help them complete. So we're thinking about those things too as reimagine the community colleges. All right, any other questions?
Still on time and on budget?
We'll let you know tomorrow. Thank you.
So thank you, Chairman White. That concludes our presentation on the legislative priorities and the budget request associated with these priorities. I will pause if there are any additional questions, but if not, I think we have covered it today.
Great. Thank you. Any final questions for the group? Alicia, thank you. If not, is there a motion to approve the consideration of the fiscal year 25-26 legislative priorities budget request? Motion. Got a motion? A second, please.
Second.
Got a second? Thank you. This does require a roll call vote. So, Secretary Perry, call the roll.
Regent George,
Aye.
Regent Harrell,
Aye.
Regent Kastner,
Aye.
Chairman White.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for everybody here. So this completes our agenda for today. Any other business to come before the committee? If not, I will declare this meeting adjourned.
Thank you, sir.
Take her over.
Thank you. So just a few announcements before we head out here tonight. First of all, thanks to everybody for a great afternoon. Angela, thank you again for joining us. And you've already been an active participant at what, 2 of the groundbreaking ceremonies? Okay, 3. All right, excellent, excellent. So thanks for jumping in feet first. And the same for Jeremy and Deanne today. Welcome again. Now, Jeremy will not be with us tomorrow. You'll be one of those voices from above. So, okay. But thanks for coming over today so everybody had a chance to meet you and spend a little time. Our committee reports and materials for tomorrow's meeting will be available on the TBR website later this afternoon. For the committee chairs, your committee report will be at the front desk of the hotel as we return from dinner tonight. As you know, we will start at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning with the presentation from Dr. Cook on Dyersburg State, and then we'll be hearing from Presidents Jones and Ridgway about their respective TCATs as well. Dr. Cook, do you want to make your way to the front to give us some announcements for tonight? There he comes. And Chancellor, do you have anything in closing?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, all right, great. Dr. Cook, thanks again to everybody who's touched pieces of this. We are very grateful to be here.
Vice Chair Reynolds, Chancellor Tidings, members of the board, and peers from across the state, we are truly honored and delighted to have you here, and we hope that these 2 days are productive, educative, and truly a pleasure for you. We have really enjoyed preparing the campus to have you here, and I have just a few announcements before we adjourn. Transportation is provided at the conclusion of this meeting. If you would like to take the bus back to the hotel, the easiest way to get there is to exit the auditorium behind me and then turn to your left and go out to the parking lot. We will have several buses running back and forth. For those of you who wish to attend the reception at 6 o'clock, the buses will depart the hotels at approximately 5:40. For those of you who want to skip the reception and just come to dinner, transportation will leave the hotels at approximately 6:50, and transportation will begin taking guests back to the hotels from the Lanham Gymnasium at approximately 8:15, with a pickup at approximately every 15 minutes until everyone has returned. We don't want anyone to feel rushed tonight. Please take your time, stay as long as you wish at the gym, but understand some of you will want to return to the hotel perhaps sooner than others. You will also have 2 drink tickets for the reception, and they are just for the reception. If you would like to have a glass of wine with dinner, you will not need a ticket for that. And then the hospitality suite at the hotel will be open from 4:30 until 7, and then again from 8 until 10:15. So again, we hope you enjoy your evening and your stay here in Dyersburg. We are so glad to see you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. We are so appreciative to you and the team. Let's round of applause. Anybody else have anything before we close this out for a productive afternoon? All right, let's get ready to enjoy dinner and time together. If there is no further business, we are adjourned.